Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei was the reincarnation of Godzilla -1 movie. Before we start, please go support IsseiOmniversalCaos for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made, there will be some mistaken character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. Clarifications. These are the children of Dagon. Shin Godzilla. Godzilla singular point. Godzilla Final Wars. Godzilla Heisei. Zilla. Godzilla GMK. Godzilla, Legendary. Issei is the reincarnation of Godzilla -1, only different. Bigger, more powerful, and faster and more agile. Will Issei have titans who will follow him and help him become the king of all titans? This story is related to Monarch, who know of the existence of the other Godzillas, except for Godzilla -1. Issei, as the legendary Godzilla, has Monarch support, which will be provided by humans from Japan called Emperors, humans who worship the titans and help -1 whenever needed. However, this Godzilla will harbor a great hatred for Kuoh and will appear in San Francisco. Prologue. Narrates. What I wanted was to have a happy and loving life with my parents and my siblings. That's every child's dream. To have a normal, happy, joyful life, where your parents wake you up with a kiss and give you a delicious breakfast. But those dreams are a lie. I lost everything, I lost it all. Happiness, love, everything. I lost it all. Because of those damn demons who ruined my life. None of what's happening to me would have happened if they hadn't ruined my life and my family. I hate them. I hate you, Rias Gremory and Sona Sitri. My name is Hyoudou Issei, or just Issei, and this is my story of how a happy moment turned into a living hell, ending up in the ocean with multiple cuts, missing an arm, missing an eye, a large wound running down my cheek to my neck, my back burned, and being eaten by fish. It happened about 12 years ago. Flashback. I was with my family telling them everything that was happening at elementary school. It was all laughter and laughter, but the doorbell rang, and my father went to see who it was, and it was a girl with crimson hair like blood and a girl with short black hair and glasses. They introduced themselves as Rias Gremory and Sona Sitri, revealing that they were demons. At first, we didn't believe them, but when we saw their demon wings, we were afraid of them for a while. However, they explained that they didn't come with bad intentions, but with good intentions. They revealed many things to us, such as the existence of other factions from different religions, some belonging to the Bible and others not. They told us we had sacred gear. My brothers thought of something powerful, and that's how they discovered they had a superior power. Amanda Hyoudou, bearer of the Dragon Queen Tiamat. Rex Hyoudou, bearer of the Red Emperor Dragon of Domination. My older brothers and I tried it, nothing came up, not a clue about anything, and that's when they told me that I didn't have anything, that I was just a normal human, and that's what detonated the bomb. As time went on, they stopped treating me the way they used to. They treated me like a stray animal looking for food. They beat me, insulted me, and moved me to the basement where I had to make my own room, just a bed and a mirror. They didn't feed me, only sometimes bread and water. They would leave me alone in the house or not even wake me up when the bus arrived. My brothers made up rumors about me that weren't true, making everyone hate me and beat me up, Caesar. That's how I spent more than 11 years suffering because of those two demons. When we entered Kuoh Academy, I thought it would be different. But the rumors continued, which were false, such as that I raped my sister, or that I give information to rival schools, among other things. I was still in the shadow of my brothers, and at that moment my darkness vanished because of the captain of the kendo club, Murayama, a beautiful girl with brown hair and 2 pigtails, and she was so beautiful that we started dating. We grew closer and even became boyfriend and girlfriend, but it was all a charade. She discovered it by talking to her friends about how it was just a challenge. Flashback. Narrator. We see Issei walking towards the kendo club. When he arrived, he was about to open the door, but he heard the following. Hadis. Murayama, when are you going to pretend to be that idiot's girlfriend? Issei stood there in shock at what he heard and prayed it was just a mistake, but. I think you're going too far with Murayama. He suffered a lot as a child, so don't do this to him. Murayama. Shut up, Ika. I only love Rex. Amanda promised me she'd make her brother my boyfriend. Besides, I hate that pervert. I was disgusted to hold his hand. I only used him to get closer to Rex. Kiryu, you'll regret what you're doing, Murayama. Murayama. Look, let's get out of here. Besides, classes are about to start. When Murayama opened the door, she froze because there stood Issei with his eyes covered by his hair, blood oozing from his hand from clenching his fist in anger. Issei just turned around, but Hadis put her hand on Issei's shoulder and said. Hadis. Why are you acting like this? Nobody's going to like you anyway, you're useless. Issei. Take it off. Hadis. Speak up, you idiot, I can't hear you at all. Issei. I said take it off. Issei glared at Caddis, but then grabbed Caddis's wrist and began squeezing it so hard that you could hear the bones cracking. Issei lets go of her and kicks her in the stomach, then grabs her by the neck to lift her into the air. One of her companions was going to help her, but Issei looked at her with eyes that were lifeless and cold, like death itself. The girl backed away in fear, and Issei said to Caddis. Issei. You're pathetic, Caddis. There's a reason your former friends abandoned you because you're a coward. You hit others for no reason. Now, let me make this clear. Bother me again and I swear I'll send your soul straight to hell. Issei roughly released Caddis, and she began coughing violently as she couldn't breathe very well. Issei looked at Murayama, who was standing still, tears streaming down her face. Issei ripped off the necklace he was wearing and threw it on the ground, but he approached and took the necklace she was wearing. Issei. My grandfather gave it to me and told me he would give it to the person I loved. Haha, how pathetic that I fell in love with a stupid girl like you who is just like her. Never speak to me again, don't look for me because to me you're nothing, you're just trash. Issei left, watched by Kiryu who looked at him with pity until he turned to the right and disappeared from their sight. Caddis. That bastard is going to pay for this. Murayama bent down and picked up the necklace that was on the ground and began to remember the beautiful moments she spent with Issei, but she ruined everything and there was no way to fix something like that. Kiryu, I told you it was a bad idea, anyway, our friendship is over Murayama, I wish I had never met you. Murayama just watched her leave, Caddis took Murayama with her, but she had to take Caddis to the infirmary because of the kick she received from Issei. And from that day on, Issei no longer trusted anyone. Every time Murayama approached to greet him or something, he would get up or pretend to be called so that he would leave and Murayama wouldn't talk to him anymore, making her regret it because when she became Rex's girlfriend, he didn't treat her like Issei did. He ignored her, didn't give her anything, didn't buy her anything like Issei did. And then Murayama tried to enter the room when she saw Issei kissing someone with white hair, almost blue eyes, and a body like hers. Murayama almost recognized her, but the sunlight made it impossible for him to see who she was, and when he saw clearly the girl was gone. Only Issei looked at her coldly. Then flashback. Issei narrates. From that day on, my life began to get worse. I joined the Gremory clan, but as always, I was ignored. Even Kiba used me as his toy for practice, Akeno shot beams at me to improve her aim, and Kaneko used me as her punching bag. I hate them, I hate demons, I hate them all. But what could I, a mere human with nothing of value, do? Only she truly loves me. She was the only one who comforted me when that damned Murayama left me. I can only trust her and no one else. I won't allow anyone to take my white princess from me. I won't allow it. Someday I will obtain power and destroy the factions so they can't destroy lives like mine because they don't deserve to be in this world. They should never have existed. They are just scum. I fought against Razor Phoenix, against Kakabiel Diodora Loki, Kuoh, Krum Kruich Rezevam and Trahixa, but my brothers took the credit as always and after that it got worse. After the war and the fall of Trahixa as the Chaos Brigade. I marked my girlfriend. I knew perfectly well that the leaders and others would do something to me, but thanks to Tannin, who gave me some dragon blood, I left my dragon mark on her so that no one can touch or hurt her. Even if they try, they won't be able to because the mark is so powerful that not even the dragon gods can break it. Furthermore, if they do, the entire dragon faction will turn against the other factions. I said goodbye to her but swore that I would return someday, stronger, and take her with me. When I arrived in the underworld I was attacked, Zenobia cut off my right arm, Kiba stabbed me in the back, Kaneko gave me a strong blow charged with Sensutyu that broke all my ribs, Irina left me a large wound running from my cheek to my neck, then Akeno threw a great beam at me that burned my back, and Rias threw a blast of destruction at me that took out one of my eyes, Rosswise threw countless magical attacks at me and took out some anti-magic chains, and then Ravel burned half of my face. Rias took the pawn pieces from me, my family told me they took away my last name, I didn't care about that, it was all the same to me. They created a portal beneath me and dropped me into the Pacific Ocean several kilometers from Hawaii. It seems I'll die very soon. But that does end ''T matter. I just hope someone destroys them for me. What is this? It feels slimy. And what is the sound? With what little I could see, I looked to the other side only to see the enormous dorsal plates of a gigantic monster. What was its name? Oh yeah, I remember now, Godzilla. Heh, it seems I was right that we aren't the owners of the planet, but rather him and others who might be like him. I hope they rule the world. Wait a minute, what's this? Narrator. Issei was standing on top of a large amount of blood, but not his own, it was Godzilla's after his fight with the male wall in Hawaii, and the blood began to enter Issei's body, affecting his cells. Issei's body began to become strange. His lost eye regenerated and became one with blue pupils. Issei began to scream as he felt like he was being burned from the inside, and out of nowhere, his body sank into the deepest part of the ocean until he was lost in the darkness, in the great darkness where the sunlight did not reflect and only a small blue flash could be seen. How, home of. We see this white-haired girl sitting on her balcony watching the full moon, and then her mark turned blue, and she just smiled because she felt that he was still alive, and she could only wait until he returned and they left that place. Who is this girl who left a mark on Issei? Until next time. Chapter 1. The King of Destruction. It's only been about 5 hours since Issei was killed, and things have gone from bad to worse. Godzilla and the Hyoudous were already too much. Humans were afraid of these giant creatures, especially Godzilla. The leaders of each faction were considering allying with the humans and trying to kill these monsters, but they needed to know what to do and how to act. They decided to act now because a new Hyoudou, almost 100 meters tall, appeared in Las Vegas, Nevada. The United States government held a meeting with the leaders of the factions to form an alliance and kill these giant creatures. Everyone was happy to have allied themselves with the humans and rebelled, but one girl was not. She desperately wished that those monsters would kill them, the supernatural beings. That girl was part of the student council and would do anything to leave her mistress's entourage and find her love. In another part of the ocean near Japan. A nuclear submarine that was more than 4,000 meters deep was carrying around 4 nuclear bombs, and above them, or rather on the surface, were 10 destroyers heading to Japan to help San Francisco, which would be the path of the Hyoudous and Godzilla. Out of nowhere, the submarine was violently shaken, putting everyone on high alert as a giant object was circling it. Then, the shaking returned with even greater force, and the object seemed to move away, only to return with even more speed and bite into a part of the submarine, revealing its razor-sharp teeth the size of an adult. The submarine began to be torn apart until something inevitable happened. The submarine exploded, along with the bombs, revealing a giant shadow that was consumed by the blast. On the surface, the explosion reached the water and destroyed 3 destroyers. The rest, seeing this, didn't know what had happened, but at that moment, a giant claw emerged from the water and began to tear everything apart. The others opened fire, but at that moment, they were sliced in half by a long tail covered in scales that resembled rocks. In the distance, smoke could be seen rising and explosions in the distance until that great shadow went into the sea, leaving only its dorsal plates visible on the surface and headed towards a specific place. San Francisco. In San Francisco, an emergency evacuation was taking place. The city was completely covered by fog. On the Golden Bridge, there were a large number of cars, buses, and other things. Demons and others were helping everyone leave as quickly as possible, using magic circles or carrying them. There were more than 30 destroyers at sea. 10 or more fighter jets. 12 helicopters armed to the teeth. In the city there was a great army of demons and fallen angels in the air, while the angels carried everyone to a safe place. On the bridge, a bus with children was stuck because the cars weren't moving and the rain was unbearable. The noise the children were making inside prevented the driver from hearing what a demon was telling him. "Driver? What? I can't hear you, ugh, kids, please be quiet." The children continued making noise but fell silent when they saw 20 tanks positioning themselves, pointing towards the sea as if they were waiting for something. The rain continued and the demons were transporting people, and the bus with the same children continued making noise, but at that moment. Roar. The roar made everyone turn towards the sea, including the driver. The demons stopped and drew their weapons, ready for anything. Boy. Wow, what was that? The children were looking at the sea next to the destroyers, but they were frightened when a seagull crashed into the window, and they saw that it was a whole stampede of them flying over the bridge, as if they were escaping from something. At sea. In one of the destroyers. Soldier. To port, 200 meters. They all looked in the direction he pointed and saw in the distance some dorsal plates approaching at high speed. Soldier. Alerts. The license plate stopped even though they were small. Captain over the radio. There will be no fire, there will be no fire. Everyone was on alert when what began to rise was none other than a long tail, and if that was the tail, then everyone looked to the right, and indeed the dorsal plates of this gigantic monster, along with its entire body that was under the destroyers, began to rise, just like the destroyers. The cannons pointed towards its back. Soldier. Fire. 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 They fired, but it seemed to have no effect, and this monster began to attack the destroyers. With its tail, which was still in the air, it crushed one destroyer. The others began to fire missiles, but they didn't hit anything and went off course, passing over the bridge and scaring everyone. The demons began to shoot at the missiles to prevent them from hitting the bridge. Others used magic circles and transported cars and other things. The driver with the children could no longer wait, he started the engine and left the lane, being seen by those behind who followed him. The bus passed a sign that said stop, but he didn't pay attention to it, but a missile hit right in the chain or whatever it is that holds the bridge up, causing it to fall onto the road, stopping the bus and the other buses and cars. The soldiers and demons approached the edge of the bridge, seeing how 13 destroyers were destroyed and smoke was beginning to rise, as well as others that were split in half. Soldier. Striker, there are civilians on the bridge, stop the fire. They saw 4 missiles approaching them and ducked, but they didn't reach them because a gigantic shadow rose up and the missiles exploded on its back. Everyone was frozen with fear at the sight of this enormous creature, which was colossal. The children looked at it with fear, but one of them looked at it with admiration. Demon soldier. Fire. Fire. Everyone fired, tanks, bullets and other things. The creature, invisible through the smoke of the destroyed ships, only roared softly, its claw hand grasping the chain on the left side, as if toying with it until it released it. A tank moving away from the creature shifted its weight. It had fallen, and that was its chance. The bus started moving, and everyone left. The creature appeared to be suffering from missile attacks coming from behind, while others were shooting at it from the bridge. Soldier. Come in. Soldier. Quick, don't let him through. The creature moved around because, well, it had to endure the pain. The children screamed and watched as the creature moved away and got closer to the bridge and used its body to break the bridge, taking some cars and buses with it, even soldiers. The monster came out of there but still did not show itself and went back into the water. Further ahead, about 2,000 meters away, there were around 20 small boats like launches, and one of these carried a nuclear warhead. Soldier. Prepare to arm the warhead. Some soldiers opened the lid of the warhead. Soldiers. Assembly keys. The soldiers put the 2 keys in their place. Soldier 4. 3. 2. 1. And the 2 of them turned the key at the same time and an old clock began to turn, having at least 5 hours before it exploded. At that moment a growl sounded. It was the roar of the male mutt that was flying above the clouds, and in the clouds near the city something appeared, an electromagnetic pulse was seen, and all electronics turned off. The boat shut off and the soldier tried to restart it. Soldier. What the hell was that? Soldier 4. Ahem. Captain. The engine's dead. There's no power. In the city, everything began to shut down, even the cars. An angel who was helping to heal saw the ambulance's light and energy disappear. An angel girl emerged, and everyone focused their gaze on the sky to see a soldier descending with his parachute. Behind them, a fighter jet crashed into a building, and everyone watched in horror as what remained of the jet fell and exploded on the ground. At sea. Everyone watched as all the fighter jets in the air began to fall. Some were destroyed upon impact with the sea. The pilots managed to get out, but one of them fell near theirs, causing them all to fall to the ground. When they got up they saw the plane sinking until a roar caught their attention, and they saw the wall of the plane fall on top of them. Soldier. There it is. Everyone started shooting, but the bullets didn't do anything to him. In the city everyone saw how the mutt closed its wings and sank along with the ship. Everyone watched in horror what happened until the male mutt emerged from the sea from the shore where they were standing, and in its mouth was the boat with the warhead. Everyone started running in fear. The mutt started biting the boat trying to separate the warhead from the launch, until using its other small arms or pincers that it had under its chest, it managed to remove it. It looked to both sides as if searching for something or someone until it spread its wings and took flight, disappearing into the clouds. Far from there the mutt began to descend until it fell on top of some buildings and saw in front of it a large amount of smoke and buildings falling. The mutt made roars as if calling something, and in the dust, something also made those same roars, but deeper, making the male spread his wings and go towards it. When it arrived, its wings raised a breeze, pushing away the dust and revealing a mutt, but a female, about 90 meters tall. The female roars softly. She joins her head with that of the male who had the warhead in his mouth. As they were joining they made strange sounds until they joined their snouts and made a single sound. The female took the warhead in her mouth and the male began to retreat. The female watched the warhead for a moment, but a loud noise caught their attention and they saw in the distance how 3 buildings collapsed and behind them a giant shadow was seen staring at them. The male spreads his wings and roars, as does the female who decided to swallow the warhead. Both are heading in the direction of that great shadow. When they arrived they saw that the shadow was no longer there and they heard the sound of an explosion like all the other soldiers and people, and they saw as 2 destroyers engulfed in flames were falling, since apparently something threw them and they crashed into buildings. At that moment something roared and they turned around only to see this great shadow that knocked down some buildings with its 2 claws. The smoke began to dissipate and what was in the shadow was their worst nightmare. The Godzilla, about 130 meters tall, with black scales and its plates a little larger and carbon black with red and other blue lines. Some helicopters outside the PEM's range were broadcasting it live. On the outskirts of the city at a military base, many watched in amazement at that Godzilla, but one of those people had only one thought. That's not Gojira. The demons flying above the city looked at this Godzilla with fear, as they could sense that it exuded death. Godzilla raised his tail and slammed it against the ground and roared softly. The female mutant roared just like the male. The male took flight, circling near Godzilla, but Godzilla, caught off guard, received a strong push from the wind, causing him to fall onto some buildings. He recovered, but the male came out from behind and stabbed him with his two spike-like legs, causing him to roar in pain. Godzilla looked at him, bit his leg, threw him far away, and lashed out with his tail at the female. The male tries to get up, but sees Godzilla raising his left leg, and the male dodges that and tries to flee, but Godzilla started going after him very fast, knocking down buildings, until he stood on two legs. Using his two arms he was able to go faster. The male, using his legs, ran as fast as he could until he turned quickly and Godzilla, not braking quickly, crashed into a small building, halting his run, but he turned his eye and saw a frightened family, a girl hugging her mother and a boy being carried by his father. Godzilla saw them, but the girl got scared and said, "Girl. Watch out behind you." Godzilla turns, hearing the girl's warning, and with his claw stops the female's leg and with his strength headbutts her in the chest, then grabs her by her two front legs and throws her away from him, crashing into some buildings. Godzilla spins around and with his tail splits a building in half and it falls on top of the female. Godzilla sees that amount of dust rising after the buildings fall, but he receives two stabs in the back from the legs of the male mutant and Godzilla roars in pain, but he turns and with his claw grabs the male and slams him against the ground and his wounds regenerate instantly. The male manages to break free from Godzilla's grip and take flight, turning towards Godzilla to stab him with his legs, but Godzilla saw it coming and bites the male near the neck, knocking him to the ground wounded. The female charges at Godzilla but receives a tail whip to the face from him and gives her a claw to the face, and the female backs away in fear from Godzilla and he only growls slightly, making them have no choice but to kneel before him as their king. This was seen by everyone. On TV it said "Must surrender." No one believed what was happening, least of all a person and their companion. Godzilla began to move away and the walls were behind him, but Godzilla was attacked from behind and when he turned around he saw that it was the army bringing their tanks, as well as the demons pointing at Godzilla. The family who had been there watching Godzilla were moving away, but the little girl looked at Godzilla with admiration. The mother takes the girl by the hand and they continue running. Godzilla was standing there, but something told everyone to flee as fast as possible, and they were right. From the tip of Godzilla's tail, a dorsal plate glows red, and that dorsal plate rises up. Little by little, one by one, they lit up and blew and rose up. All the dorsal plates rose up and glowed bright blue. Godzilla opened his mouth gathering energy. Everyone saw this, some people stopped to watch, but the family wasn't stupid enough to stop. Godzilla finishes gathering the necessary energy and the plates pierce him, and he quickly lowers his head and fires a large, strong blue heat ray in a single direction, just like in the video. The explosion was enormous, like 3 nuclear explosions in one place. The shockwave was devastating, knocking down buildings, people were flying through the air, cars and everything else were destroyed, and even demons and soldiers were carbonized by the explosion, especially since they were nearby. The family reached a ravine and hid behind it, as did other people, but when one of them tried to go down, he was carried away by the air current. The shockwave returned from the explosion with force until it stopped. They all began to emerge from their hiding places and turned their gazes ahead of them, but their faces reflected horror and fear. San Francisco no longer existed, it was engulfed in flames. Godzilla stood there unharmed, some buildings were destroyed, others almost destroyed, further on there were still what remained of the explosion. Godzilla let out a roar towards the explosion, but it was a roar that inspired fear. Godzilla turned and his plates glowed a little, but not to shoot, but to scare. Godzilla passed through the middle of the mutts who began to follow Godzilla. The male spread his wings and flew away, the female, well, she followed Godzilla since he was her king, and she had to obey him. Godzilla's license plates disappeared in plain sight. 20 minutes later, the one who was supposed to appear, Gojira, arrived, but upon arriving, he only saw the city in ruins and with some fire, but he didn't see the mutts anywhere, and something was wrong, since he detected that someone else had been there, and it was one of his species. Rescue operations began, the search for survivors began. News. The damage caused by this giant Godzilla amounts to more than 6,000 dead and 8,000 missing, who were still under the rubble. The 2 Hyoudous disappeared from the city, and a few moments ago Godzilla, or rather Gojira, arrived in the city, but seeing that nothing remained, he left. A search and tracking operation has begun for these Hyoudous and this Godzilla that appeared, and some people, like the military and the people from Monarch, have given him a name. Godzilla -1. More than 500 kilometers away, near the coast of Japan, Godzilla-1 is seen arriving at a huge island that is off the radar and that nobody knows about. The island is 30,000 meters long and, as I said, nobody knows where it is, since this island is in what could be called another dimension that only Godzilla-1 is able to enter. The male flew in and saw the island as his new home, and behind Godzilla the female emerged from the sea. The island was perfect for them, with great mountains over 4,000 meters high, others 500 meters high, hills, lakes, and other features. Now that place was his, but Godzilla- didn't know that it was actually another version of Japan, and they were connected, the island to the mainland, and he could leave whenever he wanted. Chapter 2. New Kingdom. On the island where Godzilla and the Mutos were, he began to walk around to see the island in more detail. The Mutos did the same. The vegetation was perfect, animals like deer, horses, birds, jaguars. Godzilla was still watching the island even though he had already gone further ahead, and the two mutts stayed in one place because the female had to give birth to her babies since there were large amounts of radiation on that island, perfect for the two of them. The female roars and Godzilla hears her roar even though he knew that the female was giving birth. Godzilla didn't know that something was watching him from behind. Godzilla passed by a mountain, but he noticed something strange. There were scratch marks on the mountain where he had been bitten. This made him roar in pain, attracting the attention of the male mutant, who went to see what was happening. -1 grabbed the creature by the neck and threw it against a mountain, realizing that it was a dragon about 47 meters tall, with 2 legs and 2 large, long wings. It was an ion dragon who roared as a warning, but to -1, it was just a being that should be controlled by a king like him. So he roared too, and the dragon lunged at Godzilla, who was already expecting it. He spun around, and the dragon's tail struck it, causing it to fall to the ground. Godzilla grabbed it by the tail and threw it some distance away. The dragon wouldn't give up. It rose up and threw vomit at Godzilla, which covered its eyes. Godzilla took advantage of this to bite Godzilla's neck, but Godzilla grabbed it with his claw and killed it by striking the back of the neck, slamming it to the ground. He then moved it a little further away and was about to do something when the male ion dragon positioned itself beside Godzilla and roared at the dragon. Godzilla simply approached the ion dragon and roared so loudly that it had no choice but to bow before its new king. However, it wasn't the only one. Other ion dragons appeared and knelt before Godzilla. There were about 15 ion dragons in total. The largest one was the one that attacked Godzilla because the rest were 20 and 30 meters tall. Godzilla growled at them as if to say go away, achieving that, and the ion dragons flew away to their nest. Godzilla also continued on his way, and the male left with the female, although they were seen by some people in somewhat strange clothes, in addition to having white markings like paint. These people saw the battle and left. Godzilla reached a great mountain 5,000 meters high, the largest on the island. It had a diameter of 900 meters, and there were others around it of about 800 meters and 1,000 meters. Godzilla saw a cave and went inside. The interior was illuminated by blue markings. Godzilla ventured deeper and deeper until he reached a lake with crystal clear water. He bent down to drink when tentacles wrapped around his head. Using his claws, Godzilla tore off some of the tentacles and pulled out a giant octopus. He raised his leg and crushed the octopus, killing it instantly. Godzilla ripped off one of its tentacles and ate it. Now he didn't have much trouble with food, although he saw paintings in a corner of Godzilla's fighting Mutos and other monsters. He didn't pay them any attention and lay down on the ground. Suddenly, a great flash came from the cave, and where Godzilla had been, there was a person with black hair, blue eyes, and tattered clothes. The person noticed their arms were covered in scales, and they had the same tail, only smaller. But this power and this form I will finally be able to save you, just wait for me a little longer, for you I will have more monsters to invade everything, no one will escape the great incarnate destruction. UN. Inside, an urgent meeting was taking place, and it was about the subject of the Mutos, since they represent a threat to the entire world, but even more so now with Godzilla-1, who left his great wave of destruction in San Francisco, or what was left of it. Some said that Godzilla-1 should be eliminated for what he did to San Francisco, others said that he should be left alone, since he was only defending himself from the military's attacks, but besides that, nobody could enter San Francisco because of the enormous amount of radiation left by his atomic breath. Regarding the walls, they needed to find them soon because the female was about to give birth, but they didn't know that the female had already given birth, and now there was still some time left before the babies hatched. Island of -1. Back on the island, the female and male mutant slept around the egg. You know how the female's egg is, where there were more than 60 baby mutants waiting to be born, so they could do what they do, rule, but well, they couldn't because of the King of Destruction. Who was still sleeping in his Godzilla form. But he was observed by native people with pale skin, but with tattoos like leaves, symbols on their backs, and wearing wooden masks painted white and green. They saw Godzilla, but then left. They entered a tunnel that took them more than 200 meters deep, and when they reached their destination there was a great city, a cavern 1600 meters long and 300 meters high. The people had gray hair and blue eyes, native clothing of a black color, boys and girls who only covered their legs, and likewise gray or silver hair. There were more than 3,000 inhabitants. The two who went to see Godzilla ran to give the report to their bosses, and when they arrived they bowed down. There were about 6 old men with the same face. They couldn't speak, so they used telepathy. "Old man. Tell us what happened up there." "Explorer. It's Godzilla, but this one is different, this one is bigger, and he also defeated the Ion Dragon." That left everyone speechless. Elder 6. "That's good news, the Ion Dragons were going to be defeated someday, and it's good that Godzilla has returned home so he can build the kingdom he so desires." Elder 2. "Let's stop watching him for now." Elder 5. "I still need to defeat the alpha of those things that want us dead." On the surface. Godzilla opened his eyes as something caught his attention. He stood up and began to leave the cave, and in front of him, he came across what could be called a new subject, for there was a titan that looked like a lizard, except for its head, which has a long snout painted like a skull. It had only 2 legs, and was approximately 10 meters tall. Godzilla knew he was a skullcrawler. Then 4 more came out, but when they saw Godzilla they backed away in fear, for they knew who Godzilla was and what he was capable of, and they had no choice but to kneel. Godzilla roared at them softly and they left, but Godzilla followed them, saying, "Take me to your leader." The skullcrawlers led him to an immense waterfall about 250 meters high, and inside, Godzilla saw the skullcrawlers go in, so he did the same. Inside, there was a tunnel his size. Godzilla went deeper and deeper until he reached a depth of 1500 meters, where he was surprised to find a larger cavern and many skullcrawlers, some 15 to 30 meters tall, who looked at Godzilla with a desire to attack and others with fear. Godzilla reached the bottom where there were gorilla bones and other Godzilla bones, but a little smaller. He noticed something among the bones, something circular in shape, but a roar caught his attention, so he looked up and saw something peeking out. It had red eyes. This creature jumps and lands 200 meters near Godzilla, revealing an immense skullcrawler about 70 meters tall, with a large body, a head not so big but with very sharp teeth, a long tail with 4 spikes, robust legs with sharp claws, and spikes on its back forming a line, which were also red in color. Godzilla was not afraid since he was an alpha, he had already subdued the Ion Dragon and the Hyoudous. If he wanted to subdue the skullcrawler, he had to defeat the leader, who was the mega skullcrawler called Ramorak. Godzilla roars and Ramorak launches an attack. Godzilla tries to catch him, but Ramorak moves faster and lands on his back, starting to scratch him. Then Godzilla starts shaking to try to get him off, but Ramorak is holding on to one of his dorsal plates until Godzilla has no choice but to fall on his back, but Ramorak gets out of there before being crushed. Godzilla gets up and notices that some of his dorsal plates were broken, but since the island had large amounts of radiation, the plates regenerated very quickly and were now a little bigger and darker, as well as seeming more resistant. Godzilla glared at Ramorak with anger and roared at him. Ramorak didn't back down, but instead lunged, but Godzilla lashed out with his tail and, taking advantage of the opportunity, grabbed him by the tail and sent him crashing into some skullcrawlers, which were crushed by their leader. Ramorak got up and jumped, but Godzilla bit him on one of his legs and slammed him against the wall. Then he grabbed him by the neck with his claw and threw him to the ground. Ramorak tried to get up, but Godzilla put his paw on his chest and stared at him intently and noticed something. Fear. Ramorak was afraid. Godzilla roared so loudly that the other skullcrawlers came out of their hiding places and went to where the 2 titans were. Godzilla removes his paw and the skullcrawler gets up with difficulty and turns around only to bow like all the others. There were around 50 skullcrawlers in total and more than 30 babies. Godzilla was about to leave, but what was on the bones caught his attention, so he takes it with his snout and leaves, but 5 skullcrawlers took what looked like dorsal plates of many shapes, and Godzilla sees this and goes to the tunnel to get out. Once outside, he goes directly to where his cave was and there, using his paw, he makes a small hole where he puts the egg. Then the skullcrawlers put their dorsal plates around it and leave, abandoning Godzilla. Godzilla looks at the egg carefully and then falls asleep. Night falls and he wakes up to the moonlight and stares at her, but his eyes held only sadness because he was not with the person he loved. On the other side was a girl with white hair, wearing pink pajamas. She was also looking at the moon and extended her hand as if she wanted to catch something. "I know you're alive, I'll wait for you until you return, Issei." The girl rubs her belly and then goes to lie down on her bed. A new kingdom was born, and now 2 species had surrendered to Godzilla -1. This was only the beginning of what's to come, as -1 desires more, he desires more titans. But do his bidding. Chapter 3. Reunion and Persecution. Island of -1. The mutts were there. The male would go out to fly, and the female would occasionally come out to get a better look at the island, since she knew perfectly well that her babies would be fine. The skullcrawlers were killing the animals that were there to eat them, like giant 6-meter buffalo. Other times they were like praying mantises, 15 meters long. But we focused on the cave where the king of the island slept. Godzilla was awakened by the sun's rays. He looked at the egg that was still in the hole, but now it had blue symbols on it. This was because the radiation on the dorsal plates was being absorbed by the egg to accelerate the process. Godzilla got up and started to leave the cave and saw some skullcrawlers that were eating, and when they saw Godzilla they just stood still, and he growled at them as if to say, "Take care of the egg." The skullcrawlers went into the cave with their food and lay down. Godzilla continued on his way until he reached the sea, where he gradually went under until he left his dorsal plates on the surface, and from there he disappeared into the fog that protected the island. Once outside, he decided to go to his next destination, which was Japan. How Japan? In Kuoh, people were somewhat scared of the monster issue, especially Godzilla. When they saw on television what he was capable of, they were quite terrified since he was obviously superior. The faction leaders searched high and low in every corner of the planet for Godzilla, but nothing was found, as if the earth had swallowed him up. Rias and her entourage, like Sona and his, went to help search for missing people in San Francisco, or what was left of it. Everyone worked well and all, but Momo hardly listened to Sona's orders. Sona was usually serious, but this time she was colder with everyone. They rarely spoke to her, and on some occasions, she punched them out for trying to touch her breasts. Sona and the other girls were marked by Rex, and Saji only wanted Momo, because for him she was perfect as his mate, but she was N''T. Every time she asked Momo to do something, Momo ignored her. There was Momo on her balcony looking at the full moon, but then she felt the presence of someone she recognized perfectly, until she changed using magic and went to that place. Momo was on a hill with a great view of the sea and the sunset. Momo looked all around but couldn't find the person she was looking for, but then she felt a tremor. Then another one. Then another one. And another. And another. And he looks ahead and is surprised to see the Titan they had been searching for and considered a threat. -1 was staring at her until -1 glowed in a sky blue hue until little by little, it began to take on a human form. The person landed in front of Momo, and she approached to see who it was, and upon seeing him better, her tears began to flow. I could never forget that hair, that gaze, those eyes, that unchanging aura. Momo. Issei. Yes, there was Issei, the king of destruction, with different clothes, black hair, blue eyes, on his arms there were like gloves, but with his skin from -1 only dark black, but it had small blue cracks. Issei. Yes, it's me Momo, it's me, my little snowflake. Momo couldn't resist and threw herself at Issei, giving him a kiss on the lips, which Issei reciprocated, and the mark that Momo had gave off a glow that intensified. They separated, leaving a trail of saliva between them, and Momo asked Issei to tell her everything that happened and why he ended up being what he is. Meanwhile, at Sona's house. She was changing her clothes to go to sleep when a memory of Issei came to her from when they met as children. He had protected her from some bullies, and how did he thank her? With beatings and torture, which upset sons. But at that moment, it seemed strange to her, since for some time now she had begun to sense a very strong familiar aura. So, using her magic, she located her pieces, but they were all at home, all except for Momo. When she realized where Momo was, she called Rias and asked her to go to the hill with her entourage. Rias, of course, agreed. Meanwhile, with Issei. Issei. And that's what happened. Momo. That's a lot to process. So you're assembling an army of titans to destroy the factions. But Issei, I know they hurt you for a long time, but if you use the titans, many will suffer. Issei. Momo, have you ever wondered why the titans are awakening? Shakes his head. It's because they're claiming a world that belongs only to them and no one else. They are the gods of this world, the kings of this planet, not the factions. They are just invading ants that should never have existed. I don't belong to the natural order like the other titans, but now that Godzilla has awakened, the others will awaken too. Momo. Are there more like Godzilla? Issei. Yes, there are more like him, but they are scattered all over the world. Each Godzilla has its own titans, so there must be at least 30 titans. Counting these ones that will awaken, they would be able to dominate the whole world if they wanted. Momo was surprised by what Issei was telling her, but he seemed sad because he was a Godzilla, but not part of the natural order or anything. Momo was about to say something when. I never expected to see you again, Hyoudou. Issei changed his face to a cold and emotionless one as Sona stood before them, glaring at him with hatred. Issei. Well, if it isn't the famous Sona Sitri, the Ice Queen, you look like an empty doll. Sona. How did you survive? Issei. What can I say? I'm someone they can't kill. Sona. If that's the case, you're still a complete loser, you're nothing more than someone who doesn't deserve to live or anything, you're just a worm that should have died when it was born. Issei. Ha 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 worm. Die. Me. Why? Issei screamed and released a dark blue aura that made Sona back away. Issei. You say I'm useless, haha don't make me laugh, Sitri, here the only one who shouldn't have been born is you. Sona. TSK damn it. Issei. You just interfere in people's lives and all you bring is misfortune. I was happy with my family until you ruined it, just like that damn bitch Rias Gremory. They only see us humans with sacred gear as weapons and tools that they can discard whenever they want. Sona. That's not true, we are not. Issei. Don't try to hide what you really are, you're just pests below everyone, including the Titans. Sona. Don't compare us to those mindless creatures. They shouldn't have existed. Issei. Well, you're wrong. Titans aren't mindless creatures. They're better than you. They're beings at the top of everything. They're the kings of this world. They'll change everything, and when the king rises, they'll destroy the factions because they hate you, not humans. Sona. We will not allow that to happen. Issei. Yeah, right, because they have their heroes, huh? And tell me, what's it like being Rex's semen dump? Issei was attacked by Sona, who hit him in the face, which worried Momo a lot. Sona. Don't talk about him like that. He's more of a man than you. Issei. Haha. Men like me? I see. So that's what you see in him. How disappointing. Issei turned around and his face was destroyed, but in an instant it regenerated, becoming as good as new, which frightened Sona when multiple magic circles appeared, and from them came Sirzechs, Azazel, Barakiel Michael, Aden Yasaka Rias and her entourage, Razor and his entourage, and of course the Hyoudou brothers, although each leader came with more than 40 soldiers each. Issei. Wow. So the false gods have arrived. Sirzechs. How is it that you're still alive, you useless thing? Issei. I won't tell them anything, haha, although they all look pathetic right now seeing that I'm still alive. Rias. If we couldn't kill you that time, this time we'll tear you to pieces. Issei. Haha I tried it if I could Tiba had pierced his heart, Zenobio had cut his head in half, and Arena had stabbed him with 5 light spears all over his body. Momo. Issei. Sirzechs. Momo Hanaki, you will be punished for being with someone like him. Guards. As the guards were about to grab her by the wrists, Momo felt something and the mark on her belly activated, and the soldiers who grabbed her were electrocuted until they turned to ash. At that moment Momo was covered by a magical blue shield, and energy spheres formed around her, and 2 swords with dragon designs emerged from her hands. Sirzechs. What does this mean? Issei. Well, it's my mark. Everyone watches as Issei's body begins to regenerate. The holes caused by the light spears close, his chest regenerates, as does his heart, and his renegade head does the same. Issei. That feels good. Well, she's marked by me, so they can't touch her because if they do, they'll die like those pathetic beings. Azazel. So if we kill you, the mark will disappear. The soldiers pointed their weapons at Issei, but he only said. Issei. Goodbye, you idiots. Hahaha. And he ran and jumped off the cliff. Everyone thought he was dead, but seeing Momo and the mark, they just stared over the cliff when a giant shadow shot into the sky, and they saw that it was an immense dragon, an ion dragon, and Issei was riding it. Issei. Bitter sayonara. Everyone followed him except Momo, who looked at Sona. Momo. I was loyal to you for too long for you to do that to Issei when he was a child, you're right, you only caused misfortune to one, here, I'm no longer part of your damned entourage. Momo threw the ivory piece to Sona, who looked at it with disappointment. In the sky. Everyone was going after Issei since he was quite far away from where he was going, but they started firing magic attacks, and obviously they didn't do much damage to the Ion Dragon, just a few tickles. Then Issei grabbed a part of the Ion Dragon's head and spun it around, and it opened its mouth and swallowed some fallen angels, and returned along the path it was on. Sirzechs was preparing his attack when he saw a soldier disappear beside him, then another and another until the soldier in front of him was pulled into the sky and in the air he could hear his screams and then the sound of flesh being crushed. Then a large number of hideous creatures, almost like birds but about 4 meters tall, began to descend from the sky. These creatures were none other than the Helix, they weren't titans, but they were still part of the titan world and there were at least 160 of them attacking. And where the dragon Ion was going there were 15. One of them approaches and Issei strokes his head and he roars happily. Meanwhile, the leaders and their troops were falling like flies as they were killed very quickly. Some were caught by the Helix and another would appear and they would grab him by both sides of his body and tear him in half. Others were taken to the clouds and there their lifeless bodies fell with holes in their chest or head. The leaders fired in all directions but did not hit them because these things were very fast. Azazel was caught by a helic and it began pecking at him while he screamed until it hit him in the face and let go. Azazel noticed that he had a hole in his shoulder and stomach and some other rather deep scratches. When the leaders reunited with the few remaining soldiers, Odin's Valkyries arrived and began firing a large number of magical attacks that managed to kill 6 helics, causing some to retreat, but the rest continued as before. They continued attacking from different directions. Until, when a Valkyrie was about to cast a spell, she was devoured alive. And everyone turned around only to see a 14-meter-tall ion dragon, but then another one appeared, catching a Valkyrie with its claw. "Nuo, help Odin-sama, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Stop. Nuo, it hurts. It hurts." The ion dragon wrestled with her until it grew tired of her screaming and lifted her into the sky, only to devour half her body. The rest of her stomach and legs fell, and 2 helics caught them, grabbing their legs and pulling them in opposite directions. Then they ripped her in half, her organs spilling out in torrents, bathing some of the onlookers in blood. They screamed in terror, but those who screamed didn't notice another ion dragon appearing beneath them. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. Their heads were ripped from their bodies and swallowed by the ion dragon. The remaining ones tried to return, but they were caught by all the helics, and the factions had no choice but to retreat, frustration etched on their faces. As they fled, their soldiers were captured and carried off by the helics until none remained. Then the helics turned and flew off with their prey in their talons, heading straight back to their home. Once in the underworld, they had Momo tied to a chair to make him talk. "Sirzechs? Where did that useless guy go?" "Momo? Ha, why would I tell you? You just provoked the wrong person." "Sirzechs? Don't speak as if you were superior to us." "Momo? I'm only saying this because it angered certain friends of mine and my beloved." At that moment the castle began to shake and the wall behind Momo broke, revealing Tannin in his dragon form and behind him the evil dragons who looked very annoyed. "Serafal? Tannin? What does all this mean?" "Tannin? We're taking the girl with us since she's under the protection of the dragons." "Sirzechs? Doing that is considered treason." "Tannin? We will not listen to beings inferior to us, we will no longer be their lapdogs that they use whenever they please, no more." Sirzechs couldn't do anything because, well, they saw clearly and there were a huge number of dragons, at least 6 million of them. He also sensed something in Tannin. He felt that his power was no longer the same, it was now superior, it was now that of a celestial dragon, just like the other dragon kings. His power was that of a celestial dragon, and the evil dragons now had the power of a dragon god at full strength, and that put them at a disadvantage since they surpassed them in numbers and power. Tannin gently took Momo and they left in full view of everyone, but Sirzechs was furious because they had lost the support of the dragons and, to top it all off, they had been humiliated in front of hundreds of horrible creatures. Kingdom -1. In Issei's kingdom, he got off the dragon and flew away. He saw how the helics ate their prey, who screamed in pain, and the women too. Some of them managed to escape and went into the forest, but there they would only find a quick death. From the forest, he could hear them screaming in pain until they stopped, and only the sound of bones being crushed and flesh could be heard. Issei was bloodthirsty. He didn't care about the lives of the factions. He would turn them to ashes once he had a large army. For now, he had the Skullcrawlers, the Ion Dragons, the Hyoudous, and now the Helics, who numbered over 600. They weren't leaving because they were in the Skullcrawler realm. That would be enough, but Issei wanted more. If they took the underworld, it would be enough for the titans he would have under his control. But Issei knew perfectly well that he had to defeat Gojira to proclaim himself king of the monsters. Chapter 4. King of Destruction and God Incarnate. We see -1 sleeping in his cave, but he opened his eyes a little and could see baby Skullcrawlers eating what were rotten parts of -1's body or skin that was about to fall off, and it was regenerating. He didn't care. It was like a cleaning for him. When they finished, they left the cave, and -1 began to get up to leave the island. When he came out, his dorsal plates glowed for a few moments, and he had a feeling that something had awakened. So he went straight to the sea and went in to see what was happening. Japan. The city of Tokyo was devastated by a huge creature of great size, a very long tail that had to stand up and eat. This curve had black skin with red cracks, dorsal plates, 2 small arms, but with sharp claws. This creature was none other than Shin Godzilla, a Godzilla that everyone calls the incarnation of God. This Godzilla had devastated the entire city using his atomic ray, which was thin, but it first set the entire city on fire until the atomic breath turned purple. This Godzilla was firing his atomic ray at what appeared to be long-range missiles and aircraft. Shin Godzilla measured approximately 125 meters in height. But at that moment he heard a roar coming from the sea, and when he turned around he saw a Godzilla approaching him. He knew this Godzilla. Shin Godzilla prepared himself as -1 approached, but not with good intentions, as he was attacking his domain. -1 passed through the sea, impressing everyone because he was heading towards Shin Godzilla. The news helicopters didn't take long to arrive. Everyone was watching the live broadcast on television that said -1 arrives in Tokyo, will he save the city? In Monarch, everyone watched in great amazement as -1 looked somewhat different. His plates were longer and somewhat pointed, his tail longer than before, his arms longer like Legendary S, a protruding spike on his elbow, his legs had lost weight, so to speak, and his chest had become somewhat large, like pectoral muscles. -1 looked at Shin Godzilla with hatred, since Japan was his kingdom entirely, his territory, so now he had to make him understand who was in charge. -1 roared at Shin Godzilla, who roared back. They stared at each other, and -1 began circling as if analyzing him. Then, -1 lunged and bit Shin's neck. Shin only roared in pain and tried to dig his claws in, but -1's hide was tough. -1 released him and slashed across Shin's face, leaving scratch marks. Shin roared with hatred and, turning around, received another scratch from -1. Then, -1 turned and whipped his tail around, sending Shin crashing onto some buildings. As -1 approached, he received an even stronger tail whip, pushing him further away. When Shin recovered, he placed his paw on Shin's chest and began to apply more force to his mane. But he hadn't counted on -1 using his claws, which dug into Shin's leg, causing him pain. He tried to pull them out, but couldn't. Then -1 applied more force and ripped one off. Part of his skin, with that torn skin minus bites the part he tore off and with his strength, manages to get him off. Shin regenerated the injured part of his leg very slowly, and when was about to do something else, he received an attack from Shin's tail and realized that he could also shoot his atomic breath from his tail. So he tried to bite him, but Shin rammed him from behind and he fell onto some cranes. Tried to get up, but he saw Shin opening his mouth and his dorsal plates glowed purple until Shin's lower jaw split in two and shot out a burst of fire at a very high temperature, which did cause some damage to but he hardened his skin, making it harder than steel. Until the fire begins to diminish and then becomes a thin atomic blast that hits -1's chest, causing him to roar in pain. Shin sees that he was under some buildings and aims his beam at both buildings and they fall on top of -1, who could do nothing. Shin, seeing this, thought he had won, but among the rubble, -1 looked at him with hatred and, grabbing a large piece with his claws, threw it at Shin's head, who received the impact and, when he turned around, saw -1 standing and healed. Shin fired his atomic beam, but the beam no longer did much damage to -1 due to his great resistance. So he simply raised his claw to shield his face and began walking towards Shin, who used his tail to fire his own atomic beam from the tip. -1 continued on his way until he reached Shin and grabbed him by the neck, then punched him shut, breaking some of his teeth. He then began scratching Shin all over his body. Shin moved his tail to -1's back and fired his beam at -1's dorsal plates, breaking several. -1 roared in pain, but then he bit Shin's head and sank his teeth in, one of them striking Shin's eye and blinding him. -1 saw that his tail was no longer firing its beam, so he bit him so hard that, using his weight and strength, he spun Shin around until he slammed into what remained of the city. Shin regenerated his eyes, but saw something shocking even to everyone. Shin's long tail was gone, only half remained, and the other half was in the jaws of -1 who ate the tip of the tail. He turns his head and sees that his plates have begun to regenerate faster than before and are as good as new. Roared as several missiles hit him from the left side of where he was standing and he saw that they were several fighter jets as well as buildings. It was the US military who had been there for a long time and they began firing at -1 from all directions. Roared to the sky, attracting the attention of the male Hyoudou, the Ion Dragon, and of course the Helic, who flew off at top speed, leaving the island. In the city, used his tail to try to crush the planes and barely managed to shoot down a few when he received a wave of missiles from his back, several destroyers that were at sea, but could not be distracted when he saw in the distance in the cloud shadows that he knew perfectly. The fighter pilot claimed to have seen a giant shadow when suddenly his plane was destroyed by none other than the Ion Dragons who came to the aid of their king. Everyone was shocked to see a large number of monsters approaching from afar. Even Monarch was shocked to see those kinds of creatures. Dr. Seres always saw the dragons and took note and his companion continued recounting the transmission, shocked by what he saw before his eyes. In the city, the Ion Dragons were destroying fighter jets. Those with parachutes managed to escape but they became food for the Helics. Some began to die from helicopter bullets and missiles, causing casualties, but these had no effect on the Ion Dragons. Then Godzilla roared at the male mutant and it seemed to understand. So it landed on the ground and raised its right leg, which began to glow red. Then the rooftop slammed into the ground, creating a shockwave and electromagnetic pulse that began to shut everything down. The planes lost power, as did the helicopters, and the destroyers shut down as well. The pulse did not disable the news helicopters, so they could broadcast everything live. From the Monarch base, everyone watched in amazement at the power of the male mutant. The planes began to plummet and the pilots had no choice but to get out of there, but they were caught by the Helix or the Ion Dragons and eaten. The male wall sees Shin's tail and, using his legs with the help of the Ion Dragon, takes it away, as it was a request from his king, since Shin's tail would be very useful and thus create a new hybrid. Mina saw Shin trying to get up and saw several buildings around him. So he ordered the Ion Dragons to destroy the part that supported the buildings. A few Ion Dragons destroyed some parts with their tails, and these slowly began to fall. Shin tried to get up, but when he saw the buildings falling above him, he couldn't do anything and was crushed by all the pieces of the buildings. Linus noticed how Shin's plates began to glow, so it was best to do the same. Little by little, his dorsal plates, starting from his tail, began to glow and rise until they reached those on his back. Shin cleared away the debris and was preparing his beam. Everyone at the base saw what -1 was going to do. Serizawa, this is what happened in San Francisco, his atomic ray. Shin fired his beam, and Minus did too, but Minus's atomic breath gained the upper hand as it was larger and more powerful, and the beam struck Shin, creating a massive explosion. The explosion was so powerful that it was like 4 nuclear explosions combined into one. The news helicopters decided to fly higher to avoid being hit by the shockwave. Shin's roar could be heard from the explosion. Minus didn't stop, he fired again and again and again and again and again. 6 explosions hit Shin, and finally Minus opened his mouth, gathering more energy. Blue lightning flashed from his plates. A ring of lightning appeared in front of Minus's head, and when he had gathered enough energy, he fired it. But instead of exploding, his beam was fired in the explosion to knock Shin down. He fired everywhere until he hit a single spot, striking Shin, who roared in pain. The shock waves merged into one and ended up knocking down all the remaining buildings. In the smoke, Shin fell to the ground badly injured, missing an arm, his skin badly burned, half of his face badly destroyed, his dorsal plates destroyed. Minus only gave a powerful roar that inspired fear. Minus turned around and started heading straight for the sea, but realized that the power had returned and the ships would soon be firing, so he went into the sea and submerged. The homing missiles were ready when suddenly the sea began to light up blue. Captain. Abandon ship. Everyone, quickly abandon ship. But it was too late. A moment later, it shot out of the sea, piercing half the ship, which exploded in a second. The ships around it were sunk by the powerful blast. But -1 wouldn't stand idly by after what they did to him. He emerged from the sea a little way from the destroyers, and his plates began to glow and rise, until he opened his mouth, raised his head to the air, and fired his beam, hitting a destroyer, and causing a huge explosion that destroyed all the destroyers. Godzilla roars to the sky and dives back into the sea until he disappears from everyone's sight. Everyone watching the live stream, especially those in Japan, started applauding as -1 defeated Shin Godzilla. But Shin wasn't dead, but he was on the verge of death and he only thought of one thing. You miserable bastard. On television he said King of Destruction defeats Shin Godzilla, hero of Japan. At the Monarch base, everyone watched in shock as -1 defeated Shin using his atomic breathing. Serizawa looked at him in amazement. Chapter 5. The Titan Government. It has been about 4 months since -1 humiliated Shin Godzilla. Since that moment -1 has been considered a symbol of Japan. Boys' clothes and sneakers were all made with images of -1. The United Nations has tried to locate -1 to exterminate them because, seeing how powerful he was and how he was able to defeat Shin Godzilla, they would not allow him to do the same to their cities. The Japanese government has created an organization, almost like Monarch, to deal with -1 and the Titans, since several Titans have appeared in Japan and other cities around the world, such as the Titan known as Agares. Titanus Basilisk. Titanus Baphomet. Titanus Shin Behemoth. Titanus Zilla. Titanus Rodent. Titanus Arachi. Titanus Mega Arachi. Titanus Muto Prime. Titanus Comodothrax. Titanus Biolante. These titans were, so to speak, -1 titans because each Godzilla has its own titans, and these, along with others, were -1 titans. Some titans were killed by -1 for not submitting to him, but Zilla, Basilisco Shin Behemoth, Arachi, Mega Arachi, Rodin Muto Prime, and Comodothrax did submit to him as -1 became stronger and bigger. Monarch's team was at a disadvantage against the organization that was now on the side of the -1 titans. This organization called Emperors sought information about the titans that -1 faced day and night. Each year -1 became stronger and bigger. A year ago it measured 130 meters, but after 3 years it measured 140 meters in height, being the biggest Godzilla so far. Kingdom of -1. In their domains everything had changed, the babies of the female mutant had now multiplied to 30 females and 30 males, the number of ion dragons increased more than estimated, the helix were now about 1300 of them, 700 skullcrawlers, there was now a baby Shin behemoth, Rodin had found another specimen of his in the dimension where they were. The island was now 70 kilometers long, with abundant flowers and wildlife. Nobody knew about this place. Everyone was minding their own business when they saw the dorsal plates of -1 approaching in the distance, but with another titan, or rather several titans. These were titans. Titanus Dracodoranus. Titanus Reptilodon. Titanus Berrigan. Titanus Axel. Titanus Quetzalcoatl. Titanus Leviathan. These were the titans he came with, as one could see wounds on -1 that healed immediately, and the other titans were the same, except for Quetzalcoatl, Berrigan, and Leviathan, who did not come with wounds since they had submitted to -1 before facing the other 3 titans, as they wished to defeat -1 and proclaim themselves kings of the monsters, but -1 surpassed them in size and power. Well, Reptilodon measured approximately 129 meters, Axel measured 130 meters, and Dracodoranus measured 134 meters in height. They didn't count on Minus being able to take on 3 titans at once, and of course he used the same Minus attack as against Shin Godzilla. The place where they fought was in Los Angeles, California, leaving the entire city devastated. The government sent its forces, or rather some troops, but they were destroyed by -1, of course. The recent titans had now integrated into the domains of -1. The number of titans was already increasing, now this was the list of titans. Titanus Angirius. Titanus Berrigan. Titanus Skullcrawler. Titanus Hyoudou. Titanus Helic. Titanus Ion Dragon. Titanus Reptilodon. Titanus Dracodoranus. Titanus Axel. Titanus Comodothrax Titanus. Quetzalcoatl Titanus Leviathan Titanus Rodin Titanus Arachi Titanus Shin Behemoth Titanus Zilla Titanus Basilisk Titanus Dug Titanus Warbit Titanus Terra Titanus Neo Shin Godzilla. These last 4 had bowed down to -1 when they first saw him. The titan Dug was, so to speak, a giant lizard 70 meters tall, belonging to the Hollow Earth. Issei, -1, encountered 7 warbits in the Hollow Earth because Issei explored the island further and found a passage that led him to the Hollow Earth, and there he encountered these warbits and their offspring. So it was best to take them to his kingdom. The Titan Terra was a 137-meter creature, which caused -1 a lot of problems, since he almost defeated him, but -1 used his atomic breath and destroyed some parts of Terra's body, and Terra succumbed to him. He was, so to speak, his rival. Finally, of course, the Titan Neo Shin Godzilla is the 5th final form of Shin Godzilla, only this one measures 127 meters in height. He knew he couldn't fight -1 now that he was evolving day by day to face all the titans. Issei knew that those titans were enough to destroy almost all the factions, but he wanted more. The Prime Wall ordered the female Hyoudous to continue expanding their race, which Issei allowed, and as if by magic, the Shin behemoth turned out to be female, and now had 2 offspring. Issei felt almost alone being the only Godzilla who hardly supported him since, well, Legendary was looking for -1 to destroy him, because he represented a danger to the natural order and his titans too, since with those titans they could dominate the whole world. Minus occasionally encountered Singular and Final, but not the others yet. Minus went to sea not to go to the human world, but to look for food, being blue whales. There were more than 50 blue whales in that kingdom. Issei, in his titan form, noticed a lone blue whale. So he dove down and shot out to the surface with the whale in his mouth. He used his jaws to bite down and kill it. He dove back into the sea and finished eating it, but as he swam, he noticed something strange about a part of the island. He dove deeper and deeper, becoming a white light, and began to tear at the wall until he succeeded and entered a large tunnel, quite big for him. He continued advancing until he noticed a light ahead, so he emerged from the water into a large cavern more than 4,000 meters underground. Issei noticed drawings and drawings on the walls depicting Godzillas, but they seemed exiled. There were at least 7 exiled Godzillas. Minus stepped on something that broke, and when he looked down, they were titan bones. There were more than 50 skeletons of many titans. Issei continued walking and noticed that the place had high concentrations of radiation, which caused his dorsal plates to increase very quickly, but only slightly. Issei continued walking until he reached a chamber and was very surprised because there were 7 immense blocks of ice, but inside he noticed shadows. Minus charged his atomic ray and fired it at each block of ice, and as they felt the heat of the ray, they began to crack until the ice broke into pieces. Minus watched as each shadow approached him, and he was surprised because there were 7 Godzillas. One 120 meters high. Do 127 meters high. 3 130 meters high. 4 140 meters high. 5 130 meters high. 6 134 meters high. 7 125 meters high. They saw -1, but when he released his alpha aura, they did nothing but bow down to their king. Now Minus wasn't alone, although well, he wasn't alone since when they went to the surface, Issei had to explain to his little brother Rudy. Yes, Issei had a son, the egg that Issei had brought with him, a Godzilla egg, and now he had a son to inherit his throne someday, although this one was very special, since he was almost like legendary, except for the fact that he was white. Even in his Godzilla form, he only measured 70 meters in height. Issei watched the Titans as they began to walk until suddenly the entire island shook, although that was not expected since that sometimes happened, and it had the meaning that the island was changing. New parts emerged from the sea, and other islands joined this one, now measuring 100 kilometers. Issei looked at the ocean. Issei. Soon Momo we will meet again. Dragon Kingdom. Momo. I'll be waiting for you, my king. Chapter 6. Emergency meeting and a threat. 5 years ago, more precisely in 2014, what San Francisco was like after -1. In the ruins of San Francisco, a family was seen. A man covered in dust and some wounds, a woman carrying a girl of possibly 10 years of age, and next to her a 9-year-old boy bleeding from the head, looking for help when they saw the same Titan that saved them and destroyed the city go straight to the sea. The boy suddenly began to feel strange until he fell to the ground. When the Monarch people arrived, the mother joined that organization to help her son and thousands of other people. It was discovered that his son was suffering from radiation poisoning from -1. When he fired his heat ray and the shockwave exploded, it hit him, but a piece of his skin that fell off flew away with the shockwave and became smaller until it lodged in the boy's right shoulder. He didn't know why it was so small, like a bee's stinger, and because of the radiation, it began to affect his body. Even though they removed that piece of skin, the radiation remained in the boy's body. Doctor. We're doing everything we can. Nurse. Doctor, hurry. The patient is getting worse. From the glass, the mother and father watched as the nurses tried to resuscitate their son, but they couldn't. 15 minutes later. Doctor. I'm so sorry Mrs. Russell, we did everything we could. The radiation caused your son to go into a coma and he won't wake up for 5 or 6 years. No. No, Andrew. Then flashback. Present. The woman seen is named Emma Russell, the mother of Andrew Russell who went into a coma due to radiation from -1. She had a look of sadness, pain and guilt. She had long carried the guilt of her son going into a coma, but she had to overcome it, but she couldn't. Just remembering -1 in every news report reminded him of his son, who was in the Monarch facility lying on a stretcher, giving his body nutrients so that he could continue living until the day he woke up. On television she saw and heard everything he said. News, thousands of people have gathered in cities affected by the multiple battles fought in recent years, all to honor the dead. Hundreds of protesters have gathered at the White House, demanding the elimination of the Titans and -1, who has not appeared in the last 2 years. The Monarch Agency is being interrogated to extract information about the Titans, how many there are, and their intentions. The whole world now knows the truth. The monsters are real. She got out of bed and grabbed what appeared to be a briefcase. In the kitchen was a girl, short hair that barely touched her shoulders, dark brown eyes. This girl was Madison Russell, daughter of Emma Russell and sister of Andrew. She was approximately 15 years old. She was sitting in the chair and with a computer on the table. She had headphones on because she was listening to music. She was chatting with her father on the computer. I'm sending you photos of the wolves I've managed to capture these past few days, daughter. At that moment they brought him several photos of wolves, some with blood because they were eating their prey. Madison. They're beautiful, Dad. Dad. How have you been? Madison. I'm doing well but a little worried about Mom. Dad. It will pass soon, daughter, take care, love. Her father, Mark Russell, had divorced his wife after what happened with his son, but he was in contact with his daughter at all times. When she left the chat, her wallpaper showed -1 roaring to the sky and some Titans kneeling before him. Madison smiled a little and touched the screen with her finger right on -1's head as the alarm sounded. Madison. Oh no. Emma. Maudie approaches with a rag to disperse the smoke. Madison. Good morning, Mom. Sorry, I forgot to leave this here. Emma. Even progress can happen, daughter. She stands on her tiptoes and turns off the alarm. Madison. There's burnt bacon, toast, and eggs. Emma. And which one do you suggest? Madison. Not safe bacon, Madison serves the eggs and bread and goes to the table, and Emma sees the computer open and could just make out the image of -1. Emma knew that Madison admired -1. Emma sometimes peeked into her daughter's room when she left her bedroom door half open and saw drawings of -1. In some, he was standing watching the sunset, and sometimes she even touched -1's nose. Madison puts her plate on top of the computer and closes it so her mother won't see the image anymore, as she feels a little ashamed that her mother knows she admires the Titan who put her brother in a coma and has almost all of humanity terrified as a supernatural world. Emma. What were you doing? Madison. Searched for recipes. Emma. For breakfast. Madison had no other choice since her mother knew when she was lying. Madison. I was talking to Dad, he's out in the fields right now clearing his head. Madison started eating breakfast to try and calm the atmosphere a bit. Emma. Listen, Madison, I know things are getting worse. Madison. I know. Emma. Especially now that the Titans. Madison. Mom, I know. Emma sighed, knowing that her daughter was bothered by her worrying so much about her. Emma. I know it's annoying for you to be reminded, but it's better to keep it in mind. Things will get better, I promise. Let me tell you something. I've already finished the prototype. Madison saw the briefcase. Madison. Do you think it's going to work? Emma. It has to be, we spent 4 years designing this only for it to be thrown away. Madison was still watching when out of nowhere everything started to shake until they heard the roar of an animal that Emma knew perfectly well. She approached the window in front of her, Madison approached, and they saw what was in front of them. Madison. Do you think Dad will be okay? Emma was about to speak when the radio rang. Radio. Boss, they need you right now, it's urgent. Emma. I understand, we're on our way. The place where they were was in the forest of China, sorry I forgot the name of the place XD, in the center of the jungle, there was a large pyramid of rock in good condition, that was one of the facilities of Monarch. Inside, Emma was walking through the corridors. Emma. What happened? Scientist. I don't know, I was asleep like a log when suddenly I woke up and the radiation levels increased even more. Madison was walking when she saw a picture of a butterfly on the wall, which shocked her. Emma and her daughter arrive at the command center, and what was on the other side of the glass was a giant egg. Scientist. Emma is about to be born, it's best to prepare. Suddenly everyone was surprised when something started to come out of the egg. It was approximately 10 meters tall, and it was a giant caterpillar that emitted light blue lights. Scientist. I present to you the Titan Mothra, or better known as Mothra. Madison. Mothra. Mothra looked all around, especially at the guards who were staring at her in amazement. Starting confinement camp. Lasers appeared forming a circle around Mothra, but suddenly the lasers turned red and went out, which frightened Mothra. Emma. What happened? Scientist 10. We're reviewing the system, ma'am, but it may take some time. Scientist 6. We lost contact with the maintenance officer. Guards went there. Scientist. Emma, I think someone got into the system and did this. Mothra roars and causes a small tremor as it was like a mesta. Mothra growls multiple times at the guards and with one of her many legs almost crushes one of their legs, but he dodges it and fearfully points his loaded weapon at Mothra. Emma. Lockdown team, lower your weapons. Lower your weapons, you're scaring her. But they didn't listen, and one of them, terrified, fired, but it only made Mothra's glow turn red and she roared with fury and started launching webs. But these were so strong that they killed them all. Some were stuck to the walls and others fell more than 40 meters underground. Emma picked up the briefcase and approached the glass door. Scientist. Emma, don't do it, we don't know if it will work. Emma. I have to try. Emma takes out her card and puts it in the reheated food and the door opens. Madison wanted to prevent that, but she couldn't and Emma had to go through the disinfection process just in case until she managed to get out. She had to approach Mothra slowly because she was afraid it would kill her. She pressed 2 buttons and at that moment the briefcase opened, revealing what it really was. Starting Orca programming. Emma searched for the bioacoustics of the Titan until she found it. Starting bioacoustic frequency. Titan. Mothra. Emma presses a large button and starts the transmission, but it only makes Mothra very aggressive and she starts attacking Emma, who dodged the webs Mothra threw at her and tried another frequency, but the result was the same. Madison was so worried about her mother that she took the scientist's card and opened the door when he almost stopped her. Madison reached her mother who was trying with everyone, but it wasn't what she wanted and she only had one chance. Mothra moved away a little and approached them with great speed and roared at them loudly. When her glow turned blue again, Mothra calmed down and Emma saw the correct frequency to calm her. Madison stood up carefully and Emma did the same, but Madison extended her hand and Mothra, sensing something approaching her, moved closer and allowed herself to be touched. When Madison did so, she felt something strange, a kind of connection or something, and Mothra, as a game, sighed loudly, scaring Madison, but making her happy. Emma turns to her friend who was shocked when behind them the door explodes and the guards are killed. Madison and Emma get scared and see many men enter with guns and shoot everyone there. At that moment, someone older, approximately 59 years old, with white hair and a white beard, approached them. He was wearing black clothing and approached Emma's friend. The friend simply raised his hand and shot him in the head, shattering the glass and frightening Madison even more. Emma, however, stared at him in fear. The man looked seriously at Mothra, but then at the orca. We see -1 grab Terra by the neck and bite him in the sky, then Shin receiving -1's atomic breath. Sam. What we are witnessing, ladies and gentlemen, is the return of an ancient and forgotten super species. Monarch Audience, Washington, D.C. Sam. The walls, Gajira, -1, Kong, Terra, Zilla, we believe that these titans and others like them give an essential balance to our world, and although some may be a danger, in Monarch and the new organization called Empires, we are prepared to determine which of the titans come to threaten us and which of the titans come to protect us all. Judge. Thank you for that great 5th grade history lesson, Mr. Sam, but we still don't have a good reason why Monarch and Empires shouldn't be under military jurisdiction or why they can't eliminate these radioactive monsters. Monarch and Empires were tasked with finding and destroying them, but can't or won't they tell us how many monsters there are or why more keep appearing. So I think it's time for the supernatural forces and the armed forces to kill them once and for all. Serizawa. Killing them will be your worst mistake. They returned because of us. Our atomic tests awakened Gajira, and others like the Hyoudous and other titans were awakened by mines and seismic slings. But these are not monsters. They are just animals that have returned to reclaim a world that was always theirs. Zeus. Why do you defend them? They're just monsters, don't you have compassion? Azazel. It's true, they have no conscience or anything, they just destroy everything they see. Hades. They don't even deserve to be called titans, that's an insult to us. They lived. But we have found in murals and writings that the titans were venerated as gods in ancient times by our ancestors, and that may give us the idea that these creatures are more intelligent than any other on Earth. Aden. Gods. Beings that don't deserve to be called gods cannot be called gods. They are only monsters that didn't deserve to exist. Serizawa. If they didn't exist, we would never have existed either. You think you are gods and superior beings, but you didn't harm the male or female well. No, your pillars managed to harm them. That proves that these titans are stronger than the beings of your world. They were here long before you, so don't insult them. Searches. How dare you, human, insult us? Serizawa. I am not afraid of your threats or anything, May Lucifer. Furthermore, if you will allow me, senators and faction leaders, I have the honor of introducing you to someone whom you should respect and honor, if you will allow me, of course. Judge. Go ahead. Serizawa nods to 2 guards and at that moment 10 guards appear, 5 on each side. The door opens and at that moment a man with blue and black hair that reached his knees enters. He was wearing old Japanese clothing and it looked like samurai armor or something like that, but he had like 2 gloves of rock stuck to his flesh. The guards knelt before him as he passed by. Image. Serizawa. Leaders of the entire supernatural world, I present to you the one you and many others know as Gajira, the king of monsters. Everyone couldn't believe what he said, that this guy was Gajira, the Godzilla who had killed other titans who had awakened and attacked the cities. The guards got up and went back to their places. Judge. If so, tell us, Great Godzilla, why are the titans awakening now? Gajira. As Dr. Serizawa said, we're waking up because of your nuclear tests and all that, but we expected to wake up in a world like it was before, but all we found was what? Pollution, the waters in the seas full of garbage, animals that are in danger of extinction, the polar ice caps almost melted, and many other things that you caused. This is not your world, it's ours. Great Red. Yours. You can't be mistaken because this world was already ruled by us millennia ago. Gajira. You better keep quiet, Red One, because you don't want another beating like when you attacked me in New York. Brad had already been humiliated by Gajira, leaving him with a large wound on his chest. Gajira. You supernatural beings refuse to accept the truth that you are nothing but pests. You didn't deserve to exist. You insult us and mock us. We are the kings of this world and we are reclaiming it, but not with destruction. Because of the mutants and the radiation they left in Las Vegas and other cities, the vegetation has increased and now those cities are no longer habitable. If we didn't exist, rest assured that within 5 years this world, along with the supernatural, would no longer exist. Searches. We have the pillars to protect us, they cannot. Gajira. Pillars. Those humans who are their heroes. How weak they are, I'm surprised they fell for their lies so quickly. Isaka, what is he saying? Gajira. Nothing, but I'll just say this to your hero Rex. Think carefully about whether it's better to tell the truth or keep lying because I know what he did, just like his sister. The truth will come out sooner or later, so you'd better decide. They were both scared because he knew everything. Bajira. Order will return, but only one problem arises. Judge. And what would that be? Bajira. The Godzilla you call -1. Upon hearing that name, everyone tensed up as they were all afraid of Godzilla. Judge. As I understand it, you have siblings, right? Bajira. The final, Issei, last, Shin, and others who are asleep, but Shin woke up and caused his destruction in Tokyo, Japan, but this -1 humiliated him, he does not belong to the natural order, I had never seen him in my life. Judge. So you mean it's a Godzilla that was born on its own? Bajira. No, it must be something more than that. He has more than one titan under his control. Every time he faces titans, he defeats them, yes, but he doesn't kill them. Instead, he turns them into subjects. Judge. What do you think you'll do with so many titans? Bajira. The control he has could dominate the world, but I imagine he must have more titans. You could say he's gathering an army for something bigger. But changing the subject, you have to learn to live with us because this is our world, not yours. Judge. So what? Does that mean it will become our pet? Bajira. No, you are my pets and we own you. Some laughed at that, but Bajira didn't care when Serizawa's phone rang, and he saw it was a message that scared him. Serizawa. I'm sorry senators, we have to withdraw them. Serizawa and his assistant along with Gajira get up and leave, but the faction leaders were not so happy about what Gajira said, as he insulted them. But elsewhere in the world, in a frozen desert, a giant being wanted to awaken and destroy everything, but a certain giant lizard will do everything possible to eliminate him. Warning. I'm doing a one-shot of Kiss X's or something like that from an XXX manga called Hyoudou made How Medicine Against Itching, it's NTR, only it will be about revenge, just one chapter with revenge from DxD. Those who want to read that manga are NTR fans. Those who don't, that's fine, but I did feel sorry for him when I read it. Another thing, I'm in the process of working on the other chapters of other theories since I'm in school and all that, and it takes up my time. In addition, another story called Recreators DxD will be released, similar to the original but different. Boku no Hero DxD. My Hero Academia in search of happiness to achieve that dream. Those 3 theories are in process, as are the others I mentioned some time ago. This Godzilla -1 fanfic will have 3 or 4 seasons, since it will feature Issei with more threats, new dangers, adventures, love, and of course he will have to face his past. That's all, thank you. Chapter 7. The Awakening. The helicopter could be seen flying above the clouds. Inside the helicopter were Dr. Serizawa, Dr. Vivian, Sam, and Madison Russell's father Mark Russell. He was chatting with Vivian. Vivian. How did you become separated from your family? Mark. When Andrew fell into a coma due to the radiation from -1, we returned to Boston, but I started drinking. You have no idea how much I hated that Madison saw me like that, just trying to forget what happened to my son. Sam can do it just like Serizawa. Sam. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you better see this. Emma combined the bioacoustics of many titans. We believe that's how she created the orca. Mark started looking at the tablet Sam gave me with the information on all the titans that the orca had registered. They were live. But we don't know what other combination it had, but if we manage to trace some of these frequencies we can find the orca. Mark. No way, he said when he saw that the list was very long. Well, how many of these things? Serizawa. 90 including -1 and Gajira. Mark. 90. They lived. We found most of them in hibernation, others we can find everywhere, on Mara Island, Skull Island, in every place on the planet. Mark. Why don't they just kill them? Serizawa. The human and supernatural government desires that, but Emma and I believe that most of them are benevolent. Mark. Don't get too confident, referring to the many Titan attacks, but especially to -1. Everyone understood that Mark hated -1, but others didn't hate him. Instead, they admired him. Sam. Hey, guess what? We're here. Mark got up and handed the tablet to Vivian. Mark went to the window and could see the Monarch facility, which looked like an oil platform, but it wasn't. Main facilities Bravo Castle. The hatches opened in the area where the Monarch symbol was located, allowing the helicopter to enter, but it descended to over 200 meters because what was above was merely a disguise for its true nature. Mark. Don't expect them to achieve this. Sam. If it's our base of operations to track and search for -1 together with the titans who became part of his kingdom. Mark. Didn't he disappear? Sam. Well, I don't know, if you know where to look Mark. When the helicopter descended through the tunnel, there was a large cavern with buildings below, and it was clear that they were creating a giant metallic claw. Inside a room, everyone was gathered to talk about what had happened. Diane. As you know, at the base located in Yunnan, China, the specimen codenamed Mothra awoke and escaped to create a chrysalis beneath a waterfall to remain safe. Another important thing is that Dr. Emma Russell and her daughter Madison were taken hostage by this man, Alan Yona, a former army colonel obsessed with restoring the natural order. To finance his operations, he began trafficking in a new and dangerous market. Titan DNA. Martinez. What do you plan to do with a giant larva like that? Rick, don't you know Martinez? I mean, there's nowhere else where they need one of these things to create drugs, biological weapons, and don't forget, this is a larva, a baby, and when it leaves the chrysalis it will become something big and bad. Jackson. Are you sure you're telling the truth? Rick, just wait and see Jackson. Diane. Our operation is this. Confine the specimen and try to find Emma and her daughter as quickly as possible. Mark. It's just a loss. Diane. Excuse me. Mark. It's a waste, they already have Emma and the Orca, why settle when they already have the keys to the whole magical kingdom of horrors in their hands? I think they want them to go after Issa Mothra to get a real prize, something much bigger and worse. Diane. Of course. Serizawa. Mark, I understand how you feel, but this isn't the only specimen they capture. You don't know what they can do with something like that in their possession. Mark. It's not that, but he has my ex-wife and my daughter, in case you forgot. Sam. Nobody forgot about Mark, but we brought you here to help us find the Orca and to give us some advice. Mark. Well, I recommend you kill these things, all of them. Especially him, seeing the image of -1 roaring at the sky. You don't want them to fall into the wrong hands, so kill them and the Orca, so he's useless now. Vivian. Emma, I wouldn't like what you're saying. Mark. I know what Emma might say, but this is better than sacrificing millions of lives to allow these things to live on the planet. Mark leaves the room angrily, leaving everyone behind. Jackson. I think he hates the Titans. Sam. It would have happened to you too. Antarctica. In the vast frozen desert, a helicopter could be seen flying overhead. Inside were Alan and his men, dressed in snow-white uniforms bearing the monarch symbol. Emma was wearing a sweatshirt that kept her warm, as was Madison. The helicopter began to descend, and on the frozen, snow-covered runway were about 10 soldiers in white uniforms. They would be in charge of helping their comrades get off and doing whatever they could. When the helicopter landed under the hatch, everyone inside, including Jonah, began to get out. Hey, don't move. Hands on the floor. Don't make us do this. Out of nowhere, heart-wrenching screams began to appear, along with more yellow lights from gunfire and the sounds of bullets. Madison hid her head in her mother's chest so she wouldn't have to see what was happening. Madison. I'm scared. Emma. I know. The soldier enters next to Jonah. Jonah. Okay, let's go. When they got out, Madison had a look of terror in her eyes at what was in front of her. Emma. Take a deep breath, look straight ahead as we practiced. All the bodies of those who were from Monarch were there, and there were more inside the base. As they went down in an elevator, Madison looked at Jonah, who was wiping his cheek. When he saw her, he smiled, but she only showed him her finger, something that surprised Jonah. Madison was waiting for them to come down, as was her mother, but when they came out, everyone looked with astonishment, fear, and horror. Soldier. Holy Mother of God. Jonah. She had nothing to do with this. What stood before them was nothing more than a huge dragon in an attack position, but frozen in a gigantic block of ice. Madison. The Zero Monster. Elsewhere, Madison, Emma, and Jonah were seen walking through corridors attached to the block of ice. Jonah. Any survivors? Soldier. No, but they tried to activate the emergency beacon, but we managed to stop it in time. Jonah. They're going to find out, do you have what it takes? Emma just nodded. Jonah. Okay, let's get to the drills now. Machines with drills began to bore through the block of ice, while Emma took out the Orca and began searching for the frequency. Madison approached the block and touched it, but felt something strange as she saw -1 roar to the sky, and all around her were the Titans and another one where she was, -1 in his Godzilla form, and her at night touching his nose. Madison didn't understand what was happening, but she didn't care. Emma noticed Madison touching the block and didn't think much of it, and on the Orca's frequency, the life readings were still there, meaning that the Monster Zero was still alive despite being frozen. Brave Castle. Mark was watching a video that he and his children had recorded, in which he and his children were bears and their mother was the intruder, which amused him because they even came out of the house, and people watched them with smiles since that was a big family, but suddenly the whole base began to shake and the lights turned red. Mark left the room and saw that everyone was moving around like crazy, scared of something. Mark. What's going on? Dr. Chang. This can't be, he's never come this close before. Mark. Who approached? Dr. Chang. Who do you think? Serizawa was looking at a large screen. Serizawa. Career path. Rick. He's moving really fast, he's spinning, he seems like he's annoyed or something. The entire base began to shake, but with greater force. Diane. Everyone to your battle stations. Jackson. You heard the boss, take your defensive positions now. Mark looked at the sensors that could detect -1 who was outside. Mark. How do they know about him? Issei Cheng. Emma helped us with this, in learning about -1's movement patterns, even his breathing and other things about him. Jackson. Lady, it's approaching 90 knots and very fast. Mark. Deactivate the weapons now. Diane. What? Why? Jackson. Ma'am, it's time for the Agave to approach very quickly. If we don't do something, it will attack. Mark. He will attack if you don't lower your weapons. Nobody wants to kill him except me, and if you don't want to die here, please lower them. Serizawa sees Mark and he nods. Serizawa. Lower your weapons. Diane. Are you serious? Serizawa. Very seriously, lower your weapons now. Diane had no choice, nor did she want to die. Diane. Everyone deactivate your weapons and do not attack. Everyone deactivated their weapons, and -1 stopped and they started listening to something. Cheng. Listen, his breathing, it relaxes. Mark understands something else they need to do. Mark. The shields will open. But when he said that, everyone looked at him with fear, since they hadn't expected him to say that. Rick. So he comes here and has a beer, are you crazy or what's wrong with you? Mark. Open the shields, it's so he can see that we are not a threat to him, please lower the shields now. Serizawa understood what he was trying to say. Serizawa. The shields will open. Everyone sighed heavily, especially Rick, who slowly opened the shields. To everyone's surprise, Godzilla's dorsal plates glowed every moment, flashing and then going out for a few seconds. Martinez. And what about those lights? They lived. It's to intimidate us, like gorillas beating their chests. Cheng. It's like he wants to threaten us or something. Sam. I don't think what he does is for us. Mark started going down the stairs, heading further ahead to see -1, who was swimming like a fish. He looked imposing, enormous, terrifying. Mark and the others watched as -1 stopped when he saw Mark in the glass, looking at him for just a few seconds, until his lights went out and didn't turn back on. They all sighed with relief, as they had been afraid he would attack them or something. Sam. That was so. -1 appeared so fast that his dorsal plate shone so brightly and spun around in front of everyone at maximum speed, making the base shake even more and causing many to fall to the ground. The lights went out, but you could still see the shadow of -1 disappearing into the darkness. Rick. Can we raise the shields now? Mark knew something. Mark. Show me his territorial roots. Rick. What for? Mark. For a quick sightseeing tour. Rick. Yes, right away. Diane. Do you know something? Mark. When an animal leaves its hunting territory, it is usually because something else threatens it. Liv. Quickly show the information. Mark. We must follow him, he must detect something, it could be the orca. Serizawa. Dr. Rick, what is your background? Rick. All roads lead to the same place, Antarctica. Mark. Excellent, then let's go find it. But he sees everyone's fearful looks, what? What's in Antarctica? Diane. Jack, contact the Argo now. Jackson. Immediately. Mark only sees that in Antarctica it said secret base and the number, which means that there was a Titan there. Chapter 9. The Plan and the Fire Demon. We see Mark wake up on a stretcher in a room in the Argo. Everyone at the counting center of the Argo was talking about the dragon that appeared, and now their information was even more shocking. The Archeng. They call him the King of Darkness, an ancient and powerful rival. It seems that the Monster Zero is afraid of him. He barely saw him and backed away as if he knew what he was capable of. Vivian. Speaking of him, does anyone know where he is? Rick. After the fight that -1 had, the King of Darkness disappeared. Sam. Emma never knew about this dragon, or rather Titan. It was always under the Zero monster and we never noticed. Serizawa, start a worldwide search. Sam. We lost the King of Darkness near the tropical storm that is over Brazil. Diana was talking about what Emma did, that she was the one who activated the bombs. Diane. I know what I saw, she was the one who activated the explosives. Sam. With all due respect, Colonel Foster, but that's impossible. She was the one who recruited everyone. Yes, without her, no one would be here. Rick. Alan must have threatened her to make her do it, he used Madison too. Mark. It was Emma. Mark entered the conversation seriously. Mark. Foster saw it was her doing, nobody forced her to do it. Vivian. Are you sure, Mark? Mark just nodded, disappointed in Emma. Diane. First I freed Mothra, then Monster Zero, and now the Dark Dragon. Does anyone see a pattern? Rick. Yes, and one not very good one is like she wants to free them all. Mark. Well, it's a shame that nobody warned that something like this would happen. Dr. Cheng looked at Mark, but with some anger at what he was saying, since she had a great hatred for the Titans. While at the bottom of the sea, Issei-1 swam in a single direction, and behind him were about 3 submarines following him. Diane. It seems that -1 is taking the same course as Emma's helicopter, handrails through South America, to here, Base 56 on Mara Island, Mexico. We'll land there in 10 minutes. Mark. And the people. Diane. Excuse me. Mark. The people who live in that place and don't know there'll be a big menu item today. Serizawa. We have already begun the evacuation. Dr. Serizawa, a call from Mara Island is on our emergency channel. Serizawa. Okay, answer. But when they answered, they were greatly surprised because Emma was looking at them sadly. Everyone was startled when they saw her. Emma. I guess I owe a reason why I did it. Mark. Where's Madison? At that moment Madison peeks out, putting her father at ease. Madison. Dad, don't worry, I'm fine. Mark. Madison, are you okay, honey? Madison. Dad, I'm sorry. Mark. Don't apologize, daughter. Well, finally he decides to show his face. Everyone turns around and sees that magic circles will appear, and out of them come Searches, Serafal, Azazel, Michael Gabriel Odio Yasaka and some guards. Searches is. I freed 3 beings and one of them is extremely dangerous, so it's time for me to give a good explanation of why I did it. Madison leaves and Emma just rubs her eyes. Emma. I know everyone deserves to know why I did it and I can't imagine what they're thinking right now, but if only they understood the reason why I'm doing it and what I have to do. Mark. Make Emma. Emma. I'm going to save the world. Everyone was shocked to hear that. Mark. Releasing those things couldn't be more inconsistent. Emma, as incredible as it may seem, it's the truth, Mark. And you, now that you're here, listen, Mark. After Andrew went into a coma, I swore that this would N''TB in vain, that I would find the solution to why the Titans awoke. Everyone listened attentively, especially the leaders, but upon investigating further, I realized that they were here for a reason, and that despite all the years we've tried to stop and destroy them, we've never accepted the truth. Mark. What's true? Emma. Humans and supernatural beings have been the dominant species for thousands of years, and what was the result? Madison, where she was, showed images of what Emma was referring to, just like in the Argo. Emma. Overpopulation, pollution, wars, the mass extinction we have is already underway and we are all the cause, we and they are the virus, but like every living organism, the earth released a fever to cure all these diseases, its first and rightful sovereigns, the Titans, images of -1, Gajira, the Hyoudous, Kong, the other awakened Titans, are shown they are part of the earth's natural order of defense, the protection of the planet to maintain its balance. But if the governments of the human or supernatural world are allowed to confine them or use them for war, the infection will continue to spread and we will all witness our planet perish and ourselves with it unless we restore the balance. Azazel. What will be left if you continue with this? A dead world ruled by monsters. Emma. No, Azazel is the complete opposite. Just like forest fires nourish the soil or volcanoes create new land, we've all seen signs that these creatures do the same thing. Las Vegas, San Francisco, wherever the Titans go, life follows them, activated by their radiation. They are the only ones who can reverse the destruction that was unleashed. They are the only ones who can maintain life on the planet, but to do that, we must free them. Serafal. You alone will annihilate both worlds. Emma. No, because however difficult it may be, I promise everyone that humanity and the supernatural will not become extinct. By using the Orca, we will return to the natural order, to an unforgettable order in which we will coexist with the Titans, the first gods. Serizawa. This is a dangerous ascent. It aims to unleash forces beyond our understanding and gambles with the lives of billions. Emma. And what are you betting on, Serizawa? Monarch is no longer functioning, only empires is, and it's about to be shut down by a powerful government and theirs, whose sole objective is to eradicate the creatures. And if that happens, what hope will we all have? Mark. You've gone crazy, Emma. Madison heard her father scream. Mark. First you endanger our daughter's life and now the fate of both worlds. What do you think, Emma? Emma. I could N''TB more sane and Madison could N''TB stronger. When Andrew went into a coma, I trained her so she could survive and even so, she'll have a chance. Mark. An opportunity. Don't you hear yourself when you speak? Not everything is math, Emma. There are things you can't control. Emma. And there are also things you can't escape. Mark. Doing this won't make Andrew react again. Michael. Please just surrender. Doing this won't do any good for the world. Emma didn't know what to answer because, well, what Mark said was true. Emma. In the last 60 years, Monarch and Empire have built bunkers all over the planet. I advise you to search for them until all this is over. That's how the transmission ends, leaving some annoyed and others thoughtful. The Archang. This bitch. Mark. How much longer until we land? Diane. 3 minutes. Rick. Well, that needs to be carefully considered. Diane. Why? Rick. Come and see this, something's not right, Emma's not on Mara Island, the signal's very weak, so I think she must be in one of our bunkers. But at that moment some alarms were heard, so they went to see what it was and looked at a screen. Sam. That's not true, I'm shutting down the containment system. Searches. If so, how much time do we have? Meanwhile, in the bunker where Emma and the other terrorists were. Some were hacking the system. Terrorist. Containment system deactivated, ready for the transmission of the Orca Sir. Alan was happy because his plan to restore order would finally come to fruition. Alan. Doctor, it's time. Emma just stared at the Orca, but she was having a mental battle about whether to do it or not, but she made her decision and already knew what to do. At that moment Madison approaches her. Madison. No, Mom, wait, what if Dad is right and what if this isn't the solution? Alan. Excuse me, a little girl is going to tell you what to do. Emma. Madison, we've already talked about this. Madison. But there might be other options. -1 is handling things his way, and what if they don't manage to do what they're planning, what if they do something worse? Alan. Listen, little one, this is very different from having the thoughts of a child towards a titan who saved his life years ago. Emma. Don't drag her into this. Alan. Why not, you're the one who got her into this, Madison. Tell me exactly what your mom said to convince you. Men and monsters living together in peace and harmony one day on Titanotopia. Terrorist. Sir, they want to track us, it's now or never. Alan. Emma, you and I have the same goal. To save the planet, and it will be achieved, but only if they are freed. Madison didn't want her mother to activate it, 1 because of the people and 2, because she was afraid that this titan would only cause destruction like the Dragon of Darkness. Madison. Please at least let them leave. Terrorist. Ma'am, it's now or never. Emma had no choice, so she took out the Orca and turned it on, and proceeded to search for the frequency to awaken the sleeping titan. Emma. I am sorry Madison, this is even more important than us. It was then that Emma activated the frequency, and Madison could only pray that those people would find refuge as quickly as possible. Mara Island, Mexico, Monarch Base 36. Everyone was running. The demons and others helped with the evacuation. Thanks to their advanced magic, they created huge magic circles and transported people away from the island, but the number of people was greater, and it was almost impossible to take everyone. Helicopters took off with children, mothers and fathers, and ships did the same. The mother was running with her son, but another person pushed them to get through, and when she helped her son up, a terrifying roar was heard coming from the volcano, which made everyone look at the volcano, stopping the evacuation. The sound of the frequency could be heard all the way down and at the top of the volcano. The people of Monarch were fleeing in fear. Right at what appeared to be a lid on the caldera, something trying to escape struck it until an explosion destroyed the lid, creating a powerful shockwave that even pushed the ships. In the volcano everyone ran faster to avoid being annihilated by the lava that was coming out, but from the lava came out a huge claw, and a roar was heard. The claw fell on top of a vehicle. What began to emerge had the appearance of a giant bird, but it had skin like rock, since not even the lava harmed it. From below, enormous wings emerged from the volcano's caldera, and everyone stood terrified and motionless as they watched the awakening of a legendary Tutankhamun. It was at that moment that the enormous titan spread its wings and roared to the sky, as if saying I have awakened, so everyone began to run in fear, and the supernatural beings accelerated the evacuation even more. From afar the Argo approached the island, and the titan could be seen growling and looking all around very curiously. Mark. This one has a catchy name. Seraphol. It's true, you know the names of the titans. What is your name? Dr. Cheng. I've investigated and local legends call him Rodin the Great Demon and Lord of Fire. Mark. Oh, now I'm calmer. Sam. Hey, do you remember the tropical storm where we lost the Dark Dragon? It's changed direction now. Where do you think it's going now? Rick. That's impossible, no storm is that fast. Vivian. I don't think it's a storm. And? The screen showed the signal of the Dragon of Darkness approaching at maximum speed. Serizawa. We need more time for the evacuation. Searches. They got most of the people out, but the rest are fleeing and making everything difficult. Rick. Well, we need to think of something quickly because it's approaching very fast. Mark. Hey, it's not a coincidence that that dark dragon is coming this way. It reacts to Avalardo's roars. That means it's coming to fight, eat, or something more intimate. Serizawa. What do you suggest now? Outside, many fighter jets are flying overhead, heading towards Rodan. He watched those planes with great curiosity, but that curiosity ended when they fired 2 missiles and they hit Rodan, causing him pain, not too great, but enough to make him very angry. He looked at the planes, already furious, and Mark ordered them to continue with the plan. Sirzechs asked the soldiers on the ground to protect themselves from what was approaching. The soldiers put shields on the people who were with them, in groups of 40 or 20 each one put up a barrier to protect themselves. Then the Argo turned around with the ships and began to walk until it then dropped and began to fly, but behind it, a great blizzard of air came with tremendous force like an avalanche. Rodan passed over the town and the air destroyed everything, taking away people, cars and many other things. People got into buildings, but others who couldn't were carried by the air until they died. Chapter 10. Fight and Loss. In the sky, the Argo could be seen alongside the squadron that protected them, and among the black clouds caused by the volcano, Rodan emerged, who had been chasing them. Rick. Argo to Gold Squadron, lure that giant phoenix and take it towards the Dragon of Darkness, estimated time 2 minutes. From afar, a huge hurricane could be seen with large tornadoes around it and red lightning illuminating the entire hurricane at every moment. The fighters performed some maneuvers in the air and returned to confront Rodan. 4 fighters launched missiles which did damage Rodan, but he folded his wings and rose into the sky at maximum speed, disappearing into the clouds. The pilot saw Rodan on the left side, but it was too late because he caught 2 fighters and made them explode. Diane. 3.2.3 Get out of there, he's following you, I repeat get out of there. The helicopter was firing to hit Rodan in the eyes, but it was impossible, and the pilot had no other choice but to use the escape seat but was devoured by Rodan himself. Rick. The Raptor is out of the estimated time for the Dragon is 60 seconds. The other fighters were moving away from Rodan, but he smiled slightly and did something shocking. He began to spin, and his wings destroyed the fighters. One by one, they fell across Rodan until nothing remained, and he continued his pursuit of the Argo. Rick. We lost the squadron. Estimated time for the Dragon, 30 seconds. The Argo and Rodan ventured into the hurricane where lightning flashed every second, making terrifying sounds. One of the lightning bolts struck the Argo, but there was not much damage. Rick. 10 seconds. Rodan extended his claws to grab him when the sensor detected the dragon, causing Rodan to move to another location. In front of the Argo tree, his worst nightmare appeared. There it was. Being illuminated by its rays. His red eyes being illuminated in the darkness giving him a sinister appearance. Everyone was terrified at that moment and the dragon just stopped and spread its monstrous wings. Diane. Downhill. Downhill. The Argo turned around, passing by the dragon, but the dragon continued on its way, and Rodan prepared to fight it. The 2 titans collided and thus began an aerial battle. The Argo continued to plummet, but upon seeing the ocean, they activated the thrusters and avoided the crash. Rodan scratched the dragon, but it bit him everywhere, making it impossible for him to hurt it. Rick. Oh mom, they're killing each other now. Then a phone call comes in. Jackson. Matey here, Raptor Argo, do you copy? Diane. Hear us something, we'll copy what's the situation. Jackson was piloting a twin-engine helicopter, but one of the engines was emitting smoke and Mara Island could be seen from afar. Jackson. We're finished here, we have too many children inside, we need to get them out quickly. Diane. Activates the composites of the Argus. Rick. The gates of the Argo do not respond. Diane. The manual structure. Rick. They're stuck. The lightning damaged everything. Mark. This can't be true. Where is the hangar? Sam. I'll give you a ride if you'd like. Mark. Can't someone else? Sam. I know the way, come quickly, there's no time. Mark had no choice but to follow him, everyone from Monarch was running around trying to help. They went through some corridors until they reached the hangar. Sam. What's the problem? A mechanic who was trying to repair turned to look at them. Mechanic. The hydraulic system is stuck. I'm trying to restart the systems, but it's not working. While the dragon, using its left and right heads, bit Rodan's 2 wings and stretched them out. The one in the middle had her neck glowing and looked up at the sky. Then, from the sky, 10 rays forming a huge circle appeared and fell, just as the one in the middle fired a gravitational ray, hitting Rodan, who fell into the sea badly injured. Then the Argo. Rick. It's Admiral William. Then the Admiral appears on the screens. Serizawa. Admiral. William. Dr. Serizawa, Colonel Foster, I want you and your forces to withdraw immediately and move to a safe distance. Diane. Admiral, I'm sorry, but I don't understand. Yes, I also want to know what he means. Everyone looked to the side and it was the director of the organization called Empires. His name was Katsuki Hanakai, he is related to Momo's family. Katsuki. We can't leave until you tell us what the hell you did. We detected a lot of energy at your base days ago. William. Well, we, along with Cadre Azazel, the Demon King Beelzebub, and several scientists from the supernatural world, have developed a prototype of 3 new weapons. An oxygen destroyer. RS-28, Sarmat. Minuteman 3. These are 3 prototypes we created, designed to wipe out any life form within a 19-kilometer radius. Hopefully, they will kill those things, and this nightmare will finally end. Titsuki. Abort the use of those weapons right now. You have no idea what you're doing. If -1 appears, they'll kill him. We must put all our trust in him. William. No, I'm sorry Kitsuki, you already had your chance, and the missiles have already been launched and are heading towards their position. May Elohim have mercy on their souls. The Admiral cut the transmission, and the sensor was able to see the 3 missiles approaching from 3 different directions. Kitsuki. That damn Kitsuki here to the Cremator command ship, move away from this position and activate the shields, we are about to receive the power of 3 missiles. Searches spoke with his men to make sure that they had taken all the people from the island, and if they had taken 80% since the rest died by Rodin. While in the hangar they were still struggling to open the doors, Mark saw that on the roof they had 2 twin-turbine helicopters, so he looked at the controls and pulled a lever, but the mechanic tried to stop him, but Mark still dropped the helicopter, opening the hatch. Jackson. Watch out. Fortunately, 9 demons appeared and destroyed the helicopter, thus preventing a great loss. Jackson. Accelerate. Accelerate. The helicopter manages to climb but abruptly loses control, spinning and almost killing the mechanics who were running. Sam, seeing this, didn't know what to do, but Mark throws himself on top of it, saving his life. The helicopter stops and everyone approaches to get the civilians out. Jackson. Thank you so much for opening up to us. But a rigid figure caught their attention, it was the dragon approaching them to destroy them. Mark. No. When he was just a few meters from the water, -1 emerged, biting his left head, and with his weight, he pulled him out of the water, saving everyone's lives. But the dragon tried to get out of the water as if it were afraid of him. The 3 heads managed to get out, but -1 grabs him by the tail, still submerged in the water, and pulls him down with all his strength, sinking him again. Mark and Sam arrive at the command room. Rick. We have to get out of here. The military launched 3 weapons to kill both of us. Mark. That's not a bad idea. In the water, -1 fought against a dragon who was trying to get out, but Minus, using his jaws, bit the left head and grabbed it to tear it off. Rick and the others watched the screen on the table as the missiles approached. Rick. 10-9-8-7-6. Minus sinks his teeth in even further, managing to tear off the left head, and comes to the surface roaring as if he were victorious since he finished one off, but then he goes back in to continue with the other 2, but he didn't realize that the 3 missiles joined together and plummet down. Rick. 3-2-1. The missiles enter the water and explode in -1. The explosion illuminated everything. The fire was extinguished by the air, only for the shockwave to then reach the island and destroy what little remained and hit the Argo. Bitsuki and the others look at the sensor, hoping that the dragon is dead. In the sea after the explosion disappeared, thousands of fish were floating on the surface and looked burned. Thousands upon thousands of fish could be seen throughout the sea until… boom. Something rose up and revealed 2 gigantic wings, the dragon was intact and roared in pain, and lightning began to appear. Everyone on the Argo never expected this, since those missiles were strong enough to kill a titan. Bitsuki. Dr. Rick, are there any signs of -1? And before he could speak, something surfaced. Everyone saw -1 roaring in great pain as blood gushed from his back where his plates were, or where they had been since they were destroyed, and he bled uncontrollably. He was missing his left arm. Dragon faction. Momo and the others saw this through a magic circle. Momo. Issei. Returning. Minus shook uncontrollably and revealed his left side which was all burned, and his face revealed a lot of blood, and his skin was visible until he just looked at the sky. Issei. I'm so sorry, Momo, I won't be able to keep the promise I made. Minus roared to the sky until he lost his gleam in his eye and roared softly until he fell to his side, sinking into the deep waters of the ocean, leaving only blood that spurted out uncontrollably. Bitsuki. Dr. Rick. Rick hurried and started looking for some -1. Rick. I'm detecting something, very weak vital signs and radiation on the ground. Everyone was looking at Rick because he seemed distressed and nervous. Rick. Come on big guy, keep fighting, you can do it. But the sensors that detect his vital signs went flat and he stopped breathing. Rick. Has passed away. Serizawa, you got what you wanted Mark. Mark looked at Serizawa, who went to sit down. Vivian just put his hand on his shoulder and Kitsuki looked so annoyed that he fell to the ground and hit the floor, screaming in fury. While on the volcano, the dragon landed on the tip of the volcano that was still spewing lava, but this seemed not to affect him at all. The middle head roared, and the one that was missing its head began to regenerate very quickly until it was like before, and when they recovered they extended their wings and the three roared to the sky as a sign of being the new alpha. Monarch Base 55, Sedona, Arizona. Enormous spider-like legs began to emerge from the ground while cars started speeding away. Base of Monarch 67, Munich, Germania. In this place the roar of the dragon was heard and what appeared to be a mountain began to move until it revealed itself to be a titan with the appearance of a mountain. Everywhere in the world except on -1 island, the titans began to move and awaken from their hibernation. Alan and his people were watching this on the screens in the bunker. Alan. I thought we were going to release them all, one by one. Emma. I'm not doing this. On screen, he lands and leans in as if to consider him his new alpha. Alan. Long live the king. Alan retreated with his men, but Emma watched in disbelief at what was happening. Then she looked back and saw Madison standing there crying. Madison. You're a monster. Madison turned around and left crying, while Emma didn't know what else to do. Dragon faction. Momo couldn't stop crying because Issei died. Momo. Issei. Issei. She let out a powerful scream to the sky, and at that moment she was enveloped in a pillar of black fire, blinding all the dragons for a few moments, until when her vision cleared, where Momo had been there was now a giant black chapel 9 meters high. Chapter 11. The Spark of Hope. Dragon faction 3 hours later. A helicopter was seen flying over the mountains in the direction of a specific place. Several dragons were seen guarding or ensuring that the helicopter landed safely. Lights could be seen pointing towards a waterfall. You could see the scientists, the layers of empiricists. On a small plastic base that protected them from the waterfall's water, where there was a black egg with spikes, all the scientists could be seen inside, and some were trying to talk to the Monarch people. Scientist. Dr. Takeo, we lost contact with those from Monarch, Castle Bravo, the confinement bases, Skull Island, all the titans that have been hibernating are escaping. Dr. Takeo, an expert on the titans, explained which ones could be good and which ones bad, what their intentions might be, and other things. Takeo. Wait, this is him, he's doing all this, everyone responds to his call. He said, seeing the dragon roar to the sky, spreading its wings on the volcano, and on the other screens all the titans awoke and attacked the cities, but the store was shaken by a great force, and that made the lights flicker. Takeo. Damn, Dr. Lila. Scientist. It's outside. Takeo poked his head out of the tent, wearing his raincoat, by the waterfall. In front of him, very close to the shore, was a 19-year-old girl with brown hair and blue eyes, also wearing a raincoat. Takeo. Dr. Lila. We've lost contact with Monarch. Dr. Lila. But a sound caught his attention, as did everyone else, who looked inside the waterfall and saw the egg glowing red from bottom to top. Everyone left the tent and the dragons watched what was happening and what was about to happen. In the sky, white, black, and red lights descended and went directly to the cocoon. 3 directions of lights descended and went to that place until the sound of something breaking was heard and from the cocoon sprouted a leg like that of a crab but black with very sharp spikes. When it came out, the lights were destroyed and the place was only illuminated by the cocoon that shone with some intensity until from the cocoon came out a titan with the appearance of a butterfly, 17 meters tall, black and red. The scientists and others were delighted by this. Dr. Takeo extended his arm smiling as the dragons knelt before this titan. The titan made sounds like those of a butterfly. Then she opened 2 enormous wings that were bigger than her, with a frightening appearance, and roared as a sign of her awakening. Bunker. Emma. Madison, wait. Emma followed Madison because she was upset about what was happening, and Emma just wanted to explain things to Madison. Madison. Don't come near me. Emma. Hey, I understand this isn't exactly how we planned it, but I can fix it. Madison. How did we plan this? You said you'd be very careful. That you'd release them one at a time and restore balance. Emma. They were going to shut down Monarch and destroy the factions, I had no other choice. Madison. Lies. Madison stopped to confront her mother and her mother stopped some distance away from her. Madison. You said we'd do it for Andrew. Emma didn't know what to say. Madison. If he wakes up he'd really like to know what you've caused. Emma. Madison wiped her tears and just said exactly and went into her room and locked it from the inside so that Emma couldn't get in. Emma tried to open it but couldn't get in and kept shouting her daughter's name, but Madison wouldn't open it for anything. Thus Argo. Mark was wearing headphones and listening to the orca's frequency to learn about bioacoustics. But he gave up and took off his headphones, but he wasn't alone in the place. Dr. Cheng was there too. Dr. Cheng. Anything? Mark. Nothing, whatever Emma used for the orca is impossible to know. It was when Dr. Cheng started talking to Mark about her family and the dragons, that's what led them to the Titans. Mark was fascinated by the Cheng family being the founders of Monarch. Diane. The oxygen destroyer and the other 2 missiles, why weren't the Dark Dragon affected, but -1 was? Jackson. Well, maybe it's not scientific, but it has something to do with him growing another damn head. Rick. I've never seen anything like it. It violates all knowledge of the natural order. The Archeng. Unless he and the Zero monster are not part of the natural order. Everyone saw her. Serizawa. What do you mean? The Archeng. I discovered this while exploring further. An image appeared of a Godzilla and 2 dragons, one golden and one black, but the golden one looked terrified. Sam. This looks very similar to something. The Archeng. This speaks of 2 dragons that fell from the stars, a black hydra that devoured gods, humans, and supernatural beings alike. Mark. Are they aliens? The Archeng. If the 2 of them are not part of the natural order, then they shouldn't be here. Serizawa. A false king. Rick. It's an invasive species, or rather invasive species. That can explain a lot about how it can create those immense storms and the effect it has on the other titans. It's as if it wants to terraform the planet in its own way. Titsuki. What were they called in those legends? The Archenth. King Ghidorah, the king of terror, and the other one, the worst, Desghidorah, the black demon, both of them are many. Diane. Well, let's leave that for now, we have company at Bravo Castle. Several warships, an aircraft carrier and helicopters could be seen, and there was also a storm which made it rain heavily and the waves somewhat aggressive. Inside, everyone was arriving at the facility, but upon seeing Admiral William, he was about to say something when Kitsuki approached and punched him. His men were about to fire, but Kitsuki's men surrounded them, and there were more of them. Kitsuki. Are you happy now? Because of you, you doomed us all by killing -1. William was getting up with difficulty because the blow had hurt him. William, we had to. Kitsuki punched him in the stomach again. Kitsuki. -1 was the key to this, and without him no one can stop Desghidorah, thank you very much Admiral William. Kitsuki turned around and said. Kitsuki. We have to go, they need us at my base. Kitsuki was on the platform when a huge black helicopter arrived. Kitsuki entered with his men. Kitsuki. Take us to Ragnarok now. The helicopter began to fly and, with the thrusters it had, it accelerated its arrival at its destination. Empire's base Ragnarok, Japan. They arrived at a 600-meter-high mountain where it opened an immense 90-meter-high door, the helicopter landed on the runway, and immediately the mechanics and others arrived, a long line of 140 soldiers formed, all having the -1 emblem. Kitsuki started walking when a scientist arrived. Scientist. Ah, Kitsuki-sama, it's good to have you here. Kitsuki. Tell me the report. Scientist. Of course, since the Titans have awakened they are beginning to cause chaos and destruction across the planet. King Desghidorah is moving across the continent and bringing with him a Category 10 hurricane. Kitsuki. What about the Titans from -1? Scientist. They haven't appeared on the map, we believe it's because they have a strong loyalty to their king, and for that reason they are ignoring Desghidorah's call and see him as a false king. Kitsuki. We need to start with Plan B. Scientist, already so soon sir? Kitsuki. We have no other choice but to use the mecha. Scientist. But sir, you still need many things, including enough energy for the mecha. It must be a source of unlimited energy. Kitsuki. What else can we do? Let that damn dragon destroy humanity? Scientist. I advise you to take something, sir, something nuclear. Our scientists detected a signal, a message. Take this to bring him back. He said nothing more than what he asked for. Kitsuki was confused, but then he understood what the message meant. Kitsuki. Okay, bring 2 and put them on the Chronos now, prepare 18 destroyers and 6 Imperials. Kitsuki started walking until he came across a hatch in the floor, then the floor split into 3 parts and a huge aircraft, twice as big as the Argo, came out of the hole. Kitsuki joined in, as did 180 soldiers. On other platforms of the facilities, 60 warplanes and 49 helicopters were already prepared. The 18 destroyers were already at sea. The Chronos ship began to fly and headed towards a single place, along with its forces that were behind it, since they knew where they were going. Brave Castle. Admiral. Moscow, London, Washington D.C., all are being attacked, on every continent. The Titans are causing fires, earthquakes, remnants, and other types of disasters that don't have names at the moment. As before, we tried to attract these creatures with nuclear materials, but they haven't taken the bait. Their behavior has become unpredictable and erratic, and with our forces weakened and all these things running rampant around the planet, we are running out of options and time. Then Dr. Cheng approached Mark and whispered something that the Admiral noticed. Admiral. Excuse me, do you have something to say? The Archang. Yes, you are mistaken, his behavior is not unpredictable or even erratic. Mark. If you'll excuse me, this might sound a bit strange, they move in packs, hunting, all packs from wolves to killer whales, every single pack answers to an alpha, and this Descendant is the new alpha, and the other creatures do what he tells them, they are an extension of him, and if we stop him, we stop them all. Diane. Is there another creature that can defeat it? Serizawa. No, -1 and Descendant are real, and both consider themselves alpha, their rivalry is balanced. Martinez. Wait, does that mean we killed our only chance to beat that thing? Bunker. Emma could be seen talking to Alan about what Descendant was doing. She was telling him that they could stop the Titans' attacks by using the Orca signal being broadcast in the Boston Stadium where they were, since the neighboring signals were so powerful that they could be heard from thousands of kilometers away, and thus they could stop the attacks. But this was being overheard by Madison, who was in her room, since there was a pipe that was connected to the room where they were talking. Island of -1. Several Titans could be seen gathered together, including the Mutos, the Helix, the Ion Dragons, the Titans that joined -1, and the Godzillas. Well, they didn't know what to do because they heard Descendant's call proclaiming himself the new alpha, but they ignored Descendant's call because they had great loyalty to their king. Issei told them that if anything bad happened, he would leave his son as alpha until he resolved everything. Everyone remembered their king's words. If anything bad happens to me, I will leave the position of king to my son Snow until I return. You must obey everything he says. I ask this of you as your king. All the Titans in their human form wanted to know what they should do. Even though Snow was a 7-year-old boy, he didn't know what to do because he practically had an army of Titans in large numbers, but there were about 90 Titans that were big and strong enough to kill several. Imagine you have white hair and blue eyes. Muto H. My lord, what should we do? We will all obey your orders. Snow looked at the female mutant but felt someone's hand. It was a girl with dark red hair and golden eyes, a long tail. This was a girl, or rather a skullcrawler cub, being the alphas. Girl. Everyone will follow you regardless of whether your decisions are good or not. Snow looked at the girl whose name was Emily and then knew what to do. Snow. Alright, listen up. We must stop the destruction of all the Titans across the world. You will split into groups of 7 of each Titan type and try to stop them and give the humans time to escape. The female Muto Titans will have to go and stop the Muto Queen and bring her to her senses. The males will try to take down the Kamizits. 9 Skullcrawlers will go and stop the Behemoth Titan. The Rodents will go to where that new alpha is and try to stop him. 4 Ion Dragons and 1 male Muto Titan will go to the Monarch facility. The rest of you will wait here until this chaos stops and my father defeats Descendant. The Titans were happy because the prince did have the makings of the new alpha someday when his father took up another position. And that's how Snow said they split into groups of 8 or 10 Titans of each species and headed to the places where the Titans were. The prince was riding on an Ion Dragon to go directly to the Monarch base, just watching as the male Muto flew above them, so many that they even darkened everything. The female Muto were swimming like the Skullcrawler and also the other Titans that -1 recruited, the males and the females staying with their offspring. Snow. Father, please, I hope you're okay. Chrono's ship. Itsuki was sitting in a chair with his tablet in his hand, watching the news of how the Titans were destroying cities and causing various natural disasters, but seeing how Washington, D.C. was left by Descendant, who was flying and rolling along with other aerial Titans protecting it in case something bad happened. The scientist rushed into the control room. Scientist. I'm sorry Mr. Kitsuki for barging in like this, but you need to see this. Itsuki put down the tablet and watched as several enormous life signs traveling in straight lines were having fun in groups all over the planet. Scientist. I've never seen several Titans like this before. They must be other Titans that were asleep. Itsuki. No, these are the Titans of -1, I think his son is already moving. Scientist. The son of -1. Itsuki. Yes. Scientist. But how is it possible that a child can lead a huge army? Itsuki. He will be a king someday and obviously he must lead the Titans as the prince. Scientist. According to what I saw in the signal, there are about 10 that are below the ship. Itsuki took his tablet and placed the cameras under the ship and saw the 10 Skullcrawlers swimming at high speed. Itsuki. Well, it's best to follow them and see where they lead us. Set course for the Skullcrawlers. Follow them, they know something. The ship made a small turn and began to follow the Skullcrawlers as they headed towards Bravo Castle. Brave Castle. The heavy rain lashed the entire sea as it was part of the Descendant storms only without the red lightning. Mark left the base with a suitcase in his hand and behind him Sam. Sam. Mark. Mark. I can't stay here when my daughter may be in danger. Sam. We can help you with this. Mark. I have to do this alone, she's all I have left on this planet. I left her once, I'm not going to make that mistake 3 times. Sam had no choice but to wish Mark luck and went back inside. Mark entered the helicopter, which was about to take off, but he heard something, like a roar, but not from a Titan, but from something else. Mark looked at the windshield and saw light between gold and red. In the sky, a light as strong as the sun began to appear in the dark storm clouds. Upon seeing this phenomenon, Mark got out of the helicopter and looked at the sky, but the light was so powerful it was like the sun itself, and he had to cover his eyes with his hand to see more clearly. The roars grew louder and louder, until the clouds were separated with tremendous force, the clouds disappeared, revealing a majestic act, a kind of giant butterfly shone with red, black and gold, a golden aura came out of this butterfly, and strong currents of air whipped the place with its flapping wings. Inside the base, everyone looked at that Titan with awe. Serizawa. How beautiful. The Archang. Batra, the queen and destroyer of monsters. Mark was with them watching the screens during that Batra event. Mark. You're recording it, Rick. Rick. Now I'm recording everything, ha. Dr. Chang. It's like a song. Rick. I think there's only one creature that's capable of understanding it. The transmission arrived. Ikitsuki. Hello, yes it's true Dr. Cheng, it's a song, I know that creature understands it, -1. Rick got to work and started searching the radar for a sign or answer until he found it. Rick. If I can hear it, there's an answer, I'll post it. The small roars of -1 could be heard from all the loudspeakers. Dr. Cheng. He's still alive. Ikitsuki. Batra and -1 have a relationship, that's why he responded to her. Jackson. Don't you think that's sick? Sam. Well, symbiotic relationships between 2 different species are not something out of the ordinary. Ikitsuki. Hey Dr. Rick, is that traceable? Rick. I'm sorry, the signal is quite weak for something like that. I know where it is. Everyone saw on the screens a 27-meter-tall ion dragon flying in front of Monarch's base, and on top of it was Snow in his human form. Snow jumped from the ion dragon and landed on the runway. He looked up at the sky and saw Batra, who just smiled with excitement. The ion dragon transformed into a 25-year-old with black hair. From below, on the pillars supporting Bravo Castle, the Skullcrawlers, along with other swimming ion dragons to avoid being attacked, and a male Hyoudou, climbed the pillar in their human forms until they reached the prince. The helicopter arrived from the Kronos ship and 10 soldiers and Kitsuki, along with his best scientists and generals, emerged from it. Kitsuki and the others knelt down. Kitsuki. Prince Snow-sama is good to see. Snow. Yes, me too, Kitsuki-san, but lift your heads, this is not the time for that. We must go help my father quickly, and I know where he is thanks to my mother. Kitsuki. Yes, and that's why we brought some nuclear bombs for your father, and I think this one has to bring another one. 10 minutes later. You could see the destroyers, aircraft carriers, warships, helicopters, the Argo ship and Kronos flying above, along with the Ion Dragon, the male Hyoudou, the Skullcrawler swimming at the speed of the ships. The others were inside the castle, while the military personnel were having a meeting on their respective ships. Diane. This Category 10 hurricane is where King Descendant has his nest. Working with the military and Empire forces, we will head there to try to move him away from the continent and continue with the evacuation. The Titans of -1 are doing everything they can to stop the Titan attacks, so we must also help them, especially those who are currently fighting in Washington. Snow. Our team will do everything possible to reach my father's location and get him fighting again, recovering his energy before it's too late. Martinez. Yes, little one, but do you think those nerds can do it? I mean, they have at least 5 nuclear bombs. What are they going to do with so many? Jackson. Didn't you understand? They'll bring -1 back to life. The gates of the Argo opened and Snow jumped into the sea where the Skullcrawlers were waiting. Snow ordered the Ion Dragon and the male Hyoudou to go with the others to help against Descendant. They agreed and left. Snow turned around and saw a Monarch submarine carrying the bombs inside. Snow was happy because this nightmare would finally end. Ova. After his battle against Shin Godzilla, Issei Godzilla -1 sensed the presence of other titans approaching his island, so he left his cave and saw all the kaiju that followed Shin Godzilla and now recognized him as their leader and alpha. Time passed and Godzilla -1 watched with a smile as his strength grew. The female and male Hyoudou were larger and more powerful, nearly surpassing Hyoudou Prime, while the Ion Dragons, like the Hyoudou, evolved alongside the other monsters inhabiting the island. Issei Godzilla -1 saw the egg begin to crack and open, understanding that his new child was about to be born. He waited, observing the birth of his future heir. Godzilla -1 knew that Godzilla and Mothra had offspring who, unlike their parents, were capable of producing and emitting radiation, but still needed to feed from time to time. The great Kaiju watched with a smile as his offspring hatched and emerged from the egg. Issei Godzilla -1 noticed that his son-daughter emitted an icy aura and radiation after seeing how its first steps froze the ground. He wasn't the only one. He also saw that the Skullcrawler and Muto hatchlings looked different. Godzilla -1 watched as his offspring, along with the other Titan hatchlings, left the cave and headed for the island's shore. He followed and was surprised to find a wounded Scylla kaiju lying on the beach, feeding on the radiation to regain its strength. Scylla had failed in its attempt to challenge Scylla Prime, as it was one of the kaiju that were beginning to support and follow Godzilla -1. Scylla, while resting and recovering in this uninhabited part of the island, felt something awaken him, and to his surprise, he saw a mini Gojira along with several Skullcrawler and Muto's babies, feeding on the liquid nitrogen that his body expelled. It was then that Issei Godzilla -1 saw how Scylla tried to get up to defend itself, but it failed. Its wounds had not fully healed, and its body had not recovered from the damage that Scylla Alpha had caused. But to his surprise, Godzilla -1 did nothing. Instead, it roared at him with great force before leaving, while at the same time signaling that it could stay on its island in exchange for proving its worth once it had recovered. Elsewhere in the world, Heisei Godzilla and Burst Godzilla began to stir after learning of Shin Godzilla's defeat at the hands of this new Gojira, which left him on the brink of death and forced him to flee before being captured or killed by the armies of governments and factions for denying monarchs' requests to move the Kaiju to one of their bases in Antarctica to be studied and learn something about his species. Male Muto. Reaching a height of 75 meters. Female Mutt. This was now the size of a fully adult female Muto, reaching 110 meters in height. They had the same powers as Muto Prime. Sound wave beam. An electromagnetic pulse 3 times stronger. Enormous strength and speed. Able to dig holes in the ground and move freely. Chapter 8. The Awakening, Final Part. A large ship could be seen flying over the frozen desert, surrounded by 10 fighter jets. The USS Argo, Monarch's command ship. They lived. Despite being outside our records and as it is the most recent discovery, our data about it is unlimited, but it seems that it is another alpha predator. Serizawa. Emma christened him Monster Zero. Vivian. He may be a rival alpha of Gojira, but we don't know if he belongs to -1, but he can fight for the dominance of the other titans. Mark was surprised that there was another alpha predator. Serizawa. Dr. Cheng. The Archeng. I've been searching through thousands of years of myths and legends, but it seems that people were afraid to even describe him. Serizawa. As if it would have been better to forget. Rick Rives. Rick. Sorry to be a party pooper, but I have news. Jackson. News is always bad. Rick. We lost -1 and Gojira, disappeared in the Gulf of the Pacific and Gojira off the coast of Japan. Mark. How did they disappear? Rick. I don't know, but I think they're tunnels that can lead them to the hollow earth, and that's perhaps how they appear so quickly. Diane. We're approaching the base. Once at the base taken over by the eco-terrorists, they inserted the explosives through the holes they had drilled. Emma had already managed to capture the frequency of the Monster Zero, and all that remained was to transmit it in order to awaken him. Madison could still see that monster on the ice, but with some fear. The soldier approaches Alan. Soldier. They're here. Alan. Okay, it's time to go, Doctor. Emma obeyed and left with her daughter. Meanwhile, a helicopter began descending from the cliff with a group of heavily armed soldiers, ready to rescue the hostages. 16 soldiers got off the helicopter when it landed and went straight to the base to rescue Emma and Madison. The soldiers began to descend in an elevator that took them to the corridors, but these were covered by a tarp like an inflatable slide, but they continued advancing until the leader, Jackson, stopped them because in the shadow of the tarp, they could see the enemies moving slowly. Jackson. Be careful, we have friends all over the place. They were nervous, but suddenly a hand appeared and grabbed one of them from behind and took him away, and he started screaming, so everyone started shooting in multiple directions, but it was almost useless because they were being carried away by them. They were firing but didn't know if they were hitting the target, but they stopped when they saw Alan and the hostages passing by their place with several armed soldiers, and they didn't know whether to fire, but if they did they would kill them both. Diane. Cease fire, there are friends in front, don't shoot. Upon seeing his ex-wife, Mark ran away, ignoring Serizawa's screams, grabbed a gun from a dead guard, and went down in the elevator. Alan had a big advantage, and they were about to take the elevator that would take them to the surface, but Mark's shout stopped them. Mark. Stop. They turn around and Madison is glad it was her father, and the one who had the control to detonate the bombs was about to shoot, but was killed by Diane, who had a rifle pointed at Alan. Alan. No. Mark. Come to my Madison, come to my daughter. Diane. Check if someone is listening, I don't have the target in my sights. Emma. Mark. Mark. "Emma, Madison, come to me now." Madison was approaching slowly, but her mother wasn't. "Mark. Come here, daughter, walk, daughter." Emma just looked at Mark sadly, then she looked at Madison and said Madison in a relaxed voice. Madison stopped, wondering whether to go with her mother or her father, but she made her decision and went with her mother, walking backwards under the shocked gaze of her father, who couldn't believe that his daughter was going with them. Emma took control and Diane now had Emma in her sights. Emma turned to the block of ice, and Mark did too, because next to him was what looked like a giant claw. "Emma. I'm really sorry." Mark didn't know what to do. "Emma. Run." Emma simply pressed the button, and the whole place began to collapse due to the multiple explosions that were occurring. Alan and his men, along with Emma and her daughter, went to the elevator. The whole place was falling apart. Mark entered the elevator, but upon seeing below and witnessing the remaining soldiers trying to help Diane, who almost fell, he had no choice but to stop the elevator and go down for them. On the surface, the entire base began to fail, and Alan's men boarded their helicopter. "Madison. Dad, what are you doing here?" "Emma. I don't know, daughter." "Alan. It's time, wake him up." "Madison. We can't leave him." At the base, all the soldiers and a few of Alan's men started running, but due to multiple explosions, the entire base collapsed, creating a huge hole that extended further and further, taking with it about 5 soldiers who were running. The rest managed to get far away when the collapse stopped, but a large explosion disoriented them because it was the base that exploded. The terrorists were being helped by those from Monarch, but look up and see the helicopter where Emma was, and in her hand she had the orca. She just pressed a few buttons, and the sound began to beep at a frequency that was so loud it could be heard where they were. Mark and the others noticed how the air was running to the other side, so they turned around and saw that it was actually going to the large hole that was filled with the fog caused by the explosion. The fog intensified more and more until golden rays appeared. Serizawa got out of the helicopter along with everyone else. Suddenly, growls were heard, and what they saw next left them frozen. A large long tail rose up, but it had a large number of spikes. Golden rays began to appear in the sky at every moment. Then a head with 10 horns and a terrifying appearance appeared, then there was another and then another, making 3 heads with long necks, and these looked down with a terrifying look. "Jackson. Don't make things up, I'm serious." Emma stared in astonishment at the great titan, but Madison saw the orca as the cause. The head of N-Meteo roared and one of its tails crushed a small house, causing everyone to start running. That same head roared to the sky, and the left head bent down and raised a huge wing, and then the right one, but in doing so, it launched large pieces of ice that crushed a few. The 3 heads roared, but the left one ducked and began licking a soldier. The others started shooting, but the bullets didn't affect it. Mark reached the helicopter. The middle head pushed the one that was licking the soldier and looked at the one on the right who just roared, and they began to raise their heads and make their necks shine with a golden color. "Soldier terrorist. Oh shit." And the 3 heads fired a powerful gravitational ray that turned everyone to ashes. The attack was so powerful that it damaged the helicopter. The others up in the sky watched the attack with fear and amazement. Madison saw the orca and then the creature who, as always, was licking the soldier's remains, but the one in the middle gave it away and they began to approach the helicopter. Madison couldn't stand it anymore and mustered her courage and took the orca using the wrong frequency, only enraging the titan who roared angrily to the sky. Alan took Madison, and Emma saw the dragon about to fire its attack when she turned off the orca, and the dragon calmed down only to go back against the helicopter. As for Alan, he ordered them to go to his secret base. Mark watched the helicopter fly away, but his was rammed by the dragon, who, out of curiosity, was looking at the helicopter, but also hitting it with its head. Suddenly, they stopped and looked around as if searching for something. It was at that moment that the sensors began to detect something approaching their position. In the distance they hear the sound of ice breaking and shining with a blue color. The dragon saw that phenomenon knowing what was coming, just like Mark, and it was at that moment that enormous dorsal plates came out, revealing Gajira who arrived first, now 135 meters tall and looking annoyed. The dragon roared in annoyance, and Gajira looked at him furiously. It was then that the dragon spread its wings and stood firmly, revealing that it was about 160 meters tall. And when they were about to fight, something else happened. The great red beam shot out of the ice and the dragon turned around, the beam stopped and something shot out of the ice, and that thing landed exactly 300 meters from the dragon, who backed away in fear upon seeing that great shadow and Gajira in disbelief. Well, that shadow turned out to be the same dragon, only black and grey, with white parts, 2 very long tails with spikes, and one at the tip that was quite long, 2 monstrous wings larger than the golden dragon that hid out of fear, 3 necks somewhat long like the other dragons, but not as long, a body larger than the other one, and large long legs with 5 claws. Each head had 6 eyes, 3 on each side, 13 long horns, and long, sharp teeth that were very terrifying. The lightning in the sky changed to a red color, and upon seeing Gojira, its left head roared with anger. Despite seeing the other dragon, Godzilla maintained his serious expression. He didn't care that it was bigger, he would continue as before. The black dragon stood at attention, revealing a size of 180 meters in height, being larger than the other. The Archeng. The black monster. Gojira roared and the dragon roared too, and it began to go against Gojira. Diane. Hold on tight, everyone. Gojira's tail struck the helicopter, causing it to veer to a position some distance away from them. The collision created a shockwave. Gojira bit the right head and slammed it to the ground, but the left head bit the arm. Gojira spun around to ram it, but the helicopter fired its red and black gravity beam at Gojira's chest, causing damage. Everyone in the helicopter started to panic because the helicopter was stuck in a large crevice that was getting bigger and bigger, but Mark was trapped by a part of the top of the helicopter, and someone started to help him get out. Serizawa sees a great red beam fall on Godzilla from the sky, causing him to fall on his back. The 3 heads roared mockingly, which Gojira didn't take kindly to. Unfortunately for him, the dragon soared into the sky and swooped down on Godzilla, ensnaring him with its tails and claws. It flung him some distance away from the egg, and the dragon's necks began to glow. As the blast subsided, it unleashed a powerful red and black beam from its 3 heads, striking Gojira, who roared in agony, and was dragged by the beam into the large pit. But somehow, the dragon fired its own beam into the sky, and an even larger one struck Godzilla, still inside the egg, creating a devastating explosion that shattered the ice beneath him. Mark, who managed to get out of the helicopter, was running with Vivian, but she turned around and saw how the head of Enmedio almost ate her, and I say almost because he stopped when he felt the presence of something else approaching him. He got up and they lived next to Mark. They continued on their way until they reached where the others were. In the distance, they saw none other than the King of Destruction, who looked cold and annoyed. The great dragon stood firm, displaying its immense size, but that did not intimidate -1, who simply remained still. -1, standing at 148 meters tall, appeared even larger than Godzilla. -1 unleashed his powerful roar at the great dragon, who did the same, and both launched themselves at each other, creating a powerful shockwave that pushed people away. The middle head almost bit him, but -1 sank his claws into his eyes, causing him to roar in pain. The left head then bit his neck, but -1 grabbed him, only to fall on top of him for a moment, causing him to roar in pain. However, his wound regenerated, and once healed, he used his tail to strike the dragon's body, causing it to back away slightly. The 3 heads bit different parts of -1, one bit his neck, another his shoulder, and the third his head. But -1 doesn't come alone, and it was at that moment that a dragon ion comes out from behind the dragon and sticks the tip of its tail into the neck of the one in the middle, making it let go, and -1 takes advantage of this to grab it by the head and throw it against a mountain. -1 sees how the mountain came down with the dragon, because Issei, was accompanied by 2 dragon ions and 3 male Hyoudous as bodyguards. The dragon takes off at full speed, but is punched by -1, crushing its left head and tearing off a horn, which is then stuck into its head. The other dragon is preparing its attack, but -1 reaches it before it can, opens its snout, and bites off its tongue, forcing it to swallow it. At that point, the dragon roars in great pain, thrashing about like crazy. The middle head saw this and stood up, and the left head healed itself, recovering its horn and removing the horn that was stuck in it, and the other one recovered its tongue. Of course, the 3 of them were angry at -1 for what he did to them. These made their necks glow and -1 awaited the attack, but it didn't happen. A large amount of red lightning fell on him, making him move, trying to endure the pain. It was then that the 3 heads fired their attack, hitting -1 in the chest. He was being dragged by the attack, but he planted his paws in the ground and stopped. Its tail falls to the ground and begins to glow bright blue. And of course everyone knew what was coming. Minus had lost his left arm, but it regenerated in an instant, and his chest recovered the scales lost in the attack, being replaced by more resistant ones. Its dorsal plates glowed and rose until they descended with speed and fired its attack, but the heads dodged the attack. However, they didn't expect what came next. A tremendous explosion occurred behind it, causing it to spin around in amazement. But it was a bad idea because -1 pushed it with all its might near the explosion, something the dragon didn't take very well. But it never expected what -1 did. He fired his beam again, and this time it hit the dragon in the chest creating an explosion, but it wasn't enough. So he fired it about 8 more times, hitting Shin Godzilla. The explosions were so enormous that they merged into one, rising to over 1,600 meters in height. But to their surprise, the same dragon emerged from the smoke with a few wounds, but he rose into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. This annoyed -1, who fired his atomic breath at the ice, creating a hole, and looked at the Mutts and Ion Dragon, who understood what he said. Mark felt unwell for some reason, and when he looked at his chest, he saw blood coming out because of what had fallen on him in the helicopter. -1 roared to the sky and went through the hole he made, and Mark was knocked unconscious. Chapter 12. Hope returns at half. The submarine could be seen descending into the dark waters of the ocean, slowly submerging into the dark sea. On either side of them were the skullcrawlers swimming to protect them from any threat. Inside, everyone was thinking about different things. Dr. Cheng was reviewing some information about Titubs and other things. Mark saw Serizawa holding his watch in his hand. "Mark. What time is it?" Serizawa sees him and he just smiles slightly. "Serizawa. Time you bought yourself a watch." "Mark. Andrew loved it when you said that, he always laughed. 5 years ago you told me that I would try to save the creature that left my son in a coma and that it was the only way to save the family I had left." Serizawa. "Sometimes to heal our wounds it is necessary to make peace with the demons that caused them." Mark. "Do you really believe that?" Serizawa. "Not you. Isn't that why you're here? There are many things we've never been able to understand, Mark. We have to accept them and learn from them, because those moments of crisis are also moments of faith, moments in which we recover or sink further. Nature always finds a way to balance itself, and the only question is, what is our role?" Mark. "Did you just make that up?" Serizawa. "No, I got it from a cookie, a very large cookie." Out of nowhere the whole submarine shook and the lights turned red, showing that they were on alert for something serious. "Captain? What's happening?" Islet. "Captain, we're being sucked into a whirlpool." From the outside, the submarine was being pushed by a very large whirlpool, and the skullcrawlers were swimming like never before. They even looked happy. Islet. 500 meters to impact. 400 meters, 300 meters, 200 meters, 120 meters, 50 meters, 8 meters. Captain. Prepare for impact. They all closed their eyes, awaiting their end. Bunker. Madison could be seen entering a room with things that might be useful to her. She took some cables, binoculars, a flashlight, and put them all in a backpack she had. Then Madison approached the door of the command center where Alan and his men were packing everything up to go do other things. Madison noticed them leaving the Orca charging in one place, and when she saw that they had left, she quietly went in, unplugged the Orca, and put it in her backpack. Then she went in through the ventilation ducts, but noticed her mother was in the dining room crying about what she had caused, but Madison had to do something about it. She wouldn't let millions die because of something her mother had caused. Madison managed to escape the bunker, but on his way he noticed 7 fighter jets flying overhead, followed by 50 demons and 40 angels as backup. The sounds of warning sirens could be heard from where she was, and she noticed that she was in a city very familiar to her. Boston. Madison watched as 40 helicopters took off from the city, carrying civilians in case the Titans attacked the city. Washington, D.C. Now we placed them in the place where it was being attacked and conquered by King Desghidorah. A destroyer passed over one of those containers from large cargo ships. All of Washington was surrounded by water, so much so that the capital and other places were barely noticeable. The sky was darkened by the layer of humidity caused by the destruction that Desghidorah caused. All the fighter jets, the Hyoudous, the Ion Dragons, and other factions had arrived to confront the Titans. The Argo and the Chronos had arrived and beheld something shocking in the sky. In the sky, all the clouds were gathered together, and around them, several tornadoes were destroying what remained. The red rays appeared each time, and when it happened, the reflection of Desghidorah could be seen flying and roaring into the sky. Sam. Did you see? It's like the whole sky is alive. Diane. Yes, because that's how it is. Then come Desghidorah roaring, happy with what he has done or what he is doing. Diane. The time has come. But the others. The submarine was intact, but there were scratches and some dents, but nothing out of the ordinary. Inside, everyone was somewhat disoriented and looked a bit unwell because, well, they received blows from the impact, but no one was injured. Captain. Situation report. Islet. I don't know what happened, Captain. Everything is somewhat damaged, but according to this, we are 4 miles from our destination. Captain. That's not possible. Rick. I already knew it. The vortex is a conduit that took us to the hollow earth. It's a type of transportation that's connected to every part of the planet. Never mind, I knew you were right, I told you, Cheng. Dr. Cheng. Shut up, Rick. The submarine continued on its course, followed by the skullcrawler. They then released probes to see what lay ahead. Everything was stable. Searches and the others were assisting with the System S abductions, but a sensation captured the image of a statue, which frightened some. The probes turned around and encountered more statues, and further on, a city submerged in the water that looked millions of years old. They thought it was Egyptian or Roman, but Michael knew it wasn't from those places. He knew something. The probe on the left side showed the image of Godzilla, which shocked everyone, especially the factions who couldn't believe what they were seeing, that humans had done something like that to them, since they were uncontrollable monsters, according to them. The Archang. All the legends, the stories, are true if they were the first gods. Vivian, they were venerated as gods by our ancestors, the protectors of nature and everything. Rick. If stones could talk, the crazy things they would tell us. Pitsuki. Dr. Rick, there's something about -1. Rick. The probe is capturing a massive heat and radiation after that ridge. The image captured by the probe showed that further ahead there was a large mass of energy gathered in one place. Boston. At a baseball stadium, several helicopters with people inside could be seen taking off to leave the city. Madison walked through the line of people, ignoring the military personnel who paid no attention to her. Madison saw that the control center was empty, so she decided to go and do something. When I entered, she began to make her preparations, recharging the Orca and connecting it to the stadium speakers. The television was playing while she did her thing. Enormous natural disasters caused by the Titans are ravaging the entire world, in addition to the huge Category 10 hurricane over Washington, D.C., left every being on the planet terrified by what is happening. People have decided to evacuate the largest cities to go to safer places. Thousands of people are sifting through the rubble to find their loved ones. Many are beginning to say that this is the rise of the Titans. Madison finished connecting the Orca with the speakers ready to start the transmission and thus stop the Titans. Chapter 13. Hope returns 2 halves. We can see everyone in the submarine. They were following the path of the lava river that was there. The further they advanced, the more structures they saw, as well as drawings of the Titans, but not of -1, that's what Serizawa began to note. The further they advanced, the more they felt the heat, along with a strange sensation. Rick. If I were you, I'd stop here. Serizawa. Why? Rick. Because I want to have children someday and I would continue without deformities, please. Everyone noticed on the screen that there was an indication of an excessive amount of radiation ahead, which caused the submarine to stop. But the probes were able to continue, or at least some of them, since 2 were destroyed, but the third remained intact, withstanding the radiation and heat emitted by the place. The probe slowly reached what appeared to be the end of the path. Rick made the probe rise, revealing something shocking when it ascended. There was a gigantic temple, intact structures in good condition, some pillars, statues of Godzilla, the whole place was burning. Why? Simple. Waterfalls of lava were falling in different parts of the place, but when the probe turned a few degrees, everyone saw that there was something above, or rather, there was the being they were looking for, and on whom they depended to win this war. Mark. Godzilla. Rick. -1. And the probe was destroyed by radiation and heat. Serizawa noticed something before the probe was destroyed, and that was that there was the dorsal plate that is responsible for gathering the radiation from -1. He knew this place wasn't his, but he used it to feed himself and gather as much energy as possible to be able to face Descendant. Rick. So what? We leave it like that so it becomes alienating. Dr. Chang. No, this could last several years. Searches. It's best to start with that plan. Pitsuki. Yes, we must start with our plan B in order to speed up the process. Rick. No, wait a minute, you want to revive a giant monster with these nuclear bombs. It's not like we're giving a battery to a dead car, this is very different. The soldier approaches. Soldier. I regret to inform you that we will not be able to launch the warheads. The collision damaged the weapon systems, and I'm afraid it's impossible to repair. Dr. Chang. Okay, what if we go there and blow up the bombs manually? Rick. Forget it, if the heat doesn't fry you, I am sure the radiation will. Pitsuki. I'll go. Everyone saw it. Mark. What? Pitsuki. He saved my life once, he saved my family. I am the founder of empires. He was the one who inspired me to keep going and create an organization so that I could find the answers to everything, to know everything about him. But I still haven't been able to repay my debt for saving me. But now I have that opportunity to save her life as he did mine, so please let me go. Washington, D.C. The whole place was total chaos, ships were burning and capsized, red rays were falling every moment, fighters were firing from afar at Rodin Descendant, who did not come out of the clouds, but he fired his dark rays shooting down more planes. The ion dragons were attacking Rodin, who was doing everything he could to get rid of them. But it was impossible because the mud hurt him with its paws every time he tried to turn. The helicopters fired missiles and bullets so as not to damage the ion dragon and the Hyoudou. But he got tired of playing, so he charged up a lethal attack and shot a sonic beam from his mouth at Rodin, which disoriented him, which they took advantage of and attacked with everything they had. Things weren't going so well on the Argo, as the lightning striking the base caused it to shake violently. On the Kronos ship, they had things under control. They aimed at Descendant to fire all kinds of missiles in order to damage it, but every time they sent missiles, they exploded on contact with the rays. Griffin and Barnes were in a helicopter. Barnes was shooting at Rodin, who was still somewhat knocked out. Griffin. Argo. We're running out of ammo and fuel. We can't hold out like this any longer. Diane. Okay, Raptor 1, keep them entertained as much as you can. Sam. Colonel, come see this. All the Titans have stopped. Diane went to look at the table where they were showing the entire world map, including where the Titans were attacking and their movement, and whether they had stopped. Why? Simple. Boston. The stadium speakers broadcast the same sound they used with Mothra, but this time it was to call them. All the Titans heard this. Madison watched television and reported everything that happened. Reporter. Everything indicates that the attacks have stopped. Each Titan has ceased attacking and is now moving in a single direction. The other Titans that were attacking them are now accompanying them to prevent them from attacking people. Supernatural beings are hovering above them to see where they are headed. All of this is happening around the world and no one knows how or why. Madison just smiled with happiness as her plan worked perfectly. Submarine. Inside the submarine, Kitsuki was putting on a special suit to withstand the high temperatures and radiation. Scientist. The suit will give him oxygen for 15 minutes, that's enough time for him to drop the warheads and return. Kitsuki. If I fail to return, my son must take my place. He will lead them. Scientist. I know you will return, my lord. You brought us together to create this organization to help -1. We will be nothing without you. Kitsuki simply hugged him because he was his colleague and best friend. Kitsuki inserted the last warheads and entered a small submarine which slowly submerged towards the temple entrance, while the others ordered to retreat as quickly as possible to avoid being hit by the shockwave. Kitsuki piloted the submarine, slowly making his way into the temple. He managed to climb up to a rocky shore where he could get off and do his thing. Kitsuki carried 2 briefcases while robotic spiders on his left and right carried the other warheads so that he wouldn't have to walk around so much. He only had 5 minutes of oxygen left, he was climbing some steps that were more than 300 steps to get to the place where -1 was. Kitsuki managed to climb up, but his vision was somewhat blurred by the steam. He could see that he was close to -1's claw, so he turned and saw a good place to drop the warheads. The spider bots dropped the warheads, and he programmed them to press the same button as him at the same time. He set the timer to count down for 2 minutes. He looked in his hand at a necklace that belonged to his mother during the San Francisco Hyoudou attack, but Kitsuki turned his head and realized that he was near the head of -1, who was sleeping, gathering his energy to fight again and reclaim the throne. Kitsuki approached -1 at a slow pace. The time was now 1:40 seconds and decreasing. Kitsuki removed his mask, and the sound made Minus open his eyes and see Kitsuki. He was surprised, but then he looked at the warheads beside him, so he already had an idea of what he was doing. Kitsuki, ready to run away, did what no one else has done. He touched -1. Minus could feel his hand, so he just let out a sigh. Kitsuki. Please save us all from this threat, Issei. Kitsuki put his mask back on and ran off. Minus watched him go and just smiled slightly. Kitsuki arrived at the submarine, and the spiders got on too. He started the submarine and pressed a button that said propellers. The submarine was so fast that it managed to pass through the entrance. Kitsuki was already leaving the entrance as fast as he could, but he could barely see the submarine that was further away. Kitsuki pressed another button which gave more speed to the thrusters, which allowed him to get close to the submarine and gave the signal to open the hatches so that he could enter, which they did quickly. The small submarine entered with its propellers emitting smoke. Kitsuki was quickly attended to by doctors who injected him with a blue serum which eliminates radiation from his body if he came into contact with it. Kitsuki. Okay, now we just need to get out of here quickly. Kitsuki. I pray that you can save us from this threat, Issei. You are the hope for all of us. Issei gazed at the eyes with a melancholic expression. Issei. This will hurt. The entire place was illuminated by the explosions that happened simultaneously. The entire place was destroyed. Everything outside was reduced to ashes by the shockwave. The shockwave was traveling at a high speed, reaching the submarine which was about to reach the surface, but it gave it a great push. Inside, everyone held on with whatever they had at their disposal to withstand the blow. Dr. Cheng took Marquez's hand, who did the same. Both closed their eyes to endure this. The submarine surfaced almost as if it were going to shoot into the sky, but no, and it fell back into the water with force. Everyone got up and started running. The cadets began trying to contact the Argo and the Kronos to rescue them. Mark and the others got out of the submarine right above and he started looking all around with a lack of connection, searching for something or someone. Dr. Cheng. Do you see anything? Mark looked in only one direction as the water there began to emit steam and a faint blue glow that grew stronger and stronger than before. Godzilla -1 song playing in the background. Everyone watched as the water began to glow in intense blue, then a whirlpool formed within that same glow. Everyone watched in shock what was happening, but a certain person knew what was about to happen. The dorsal plates of -1 emerged from the water, only now they were a little longer and sharper. -1 began to rise, showing his new evolution after being destroyed by the explosion and regenerating, thus achieving a new form. Minus began to glow his dorsal plates little by little, as did his eyes, until he fired an atomic beam with a darker blue color, the atomic beam spiraling. This reached the sky causing thunder and other things everywhere. Minus lowered his head and his gaze went to the submarine, everyone lengthened and more Sirzechs and the others who knew that he still had a great hatred for them. Minus slowly approached until he was close to them, looking at them with a serious and cold gaze. Mark. That nobody gets involved. Nobody moved, but Mark could see Minus and Minus could see him, and it seemed that he was saying something that Minus understood well. Minus turned around and submerged, then sped off in the direction from which the orca's frequency originated. Dr. Cheng. Are you okay? Mark. I know how to find them. Above them appeared the Chronos and the Argo, ready to take them. I know how to find them. Chapter 14. Boston. In the city of Boston there was absolute silence, there was nobody in the city, but in every place there were lights on, and the sound of the orca could be heard thousands of kilometers away. On the roof of the stadium was Madison with binoculars looking in all directions looking for something. Madison looked all around, but there was nothing at all but an empty city, but then she noticed something and it was the wind. She looked at the window next to her and saw how it practically stopped on its own and began to move in the opposite direction, backwards, which began to scare Madison a little. In the vicinity of the city, enormous columns of fog moved, surrounding the city. Madison looked ahead and saw how the fog was coming towards her like a tsunami at full speed. She started running and entered the stadium before the fog reached her. She arrived at the central booth and looked out the window at everything that was happening outside. The fog was disappearing, but the sky was now dark, raindrops began to fall very quickly, and Madison was waiting for a certain colossal guest to arrive. Until Escadora's arrival caused Madison to fall to the ground due to the tremor caused by the black dragon. Escadora stepped onto the roof of the stadium, their heads began to search for who was challenging him for the throne, the sky soon turned red from his lightning, and in the distance, tornadoes began to cause chaos everywhere, lifting houses and other things. The central head watched this with a smile, the left head didn't care about anything and just wanted to find its challenger, and the right head just roared to the sky, as if calling for that alpha. The sound of the horns caught the attention of the left head, who, no longer able to bear the noise, simply opened its jaw and ripped everything out, causing another tremor. Madison could see how all the horns were now in Descadora's mouth, but only a few remained, though the sound was not as loud. She was a little annoyed so she disconnected the orca with the state speakers, but it was a terrible idea because the alpha call was still activated, so when she stood up she felt how the three heads were behind her and yes. She turned around and in front of her the three heads were staring at Madison, either with curiosity or with a desire to kill upon finding the alpha who was calling them. Madison damn. Escadora fired her gravity beams in the direction of Madison, but luckily she dodged the beams while running, albeit with difficulty. Escadora began to destroy the entire stadium with his rays, and since he could control the weather and the rays of the sky, he made them full everywhere, causing more destruction. Madison ran up the stairs, but a large piece of rubble started coming after her. Luckily, she got out in time before it could crush her. But all that was left was to dodge all the lightning bolts that were falling and watch as Descadora continued firing those beams at the stadium in order to destroy everything, leaving Madison no possibility of escaping or hiding from him. Madison was struck by lightning that hit behind her, causing her to be thrown about 5 meters from where she was standing. Madison lay on the ground, unable to move from the force of the explosion and the fall. She stared at Descadora, who had managed to find her. Each head glared at her, some with hatred, others with a desire to kill and devour her. Madison managed to kneel and grab the orca, throwing it far away. But as it fell, it activated another frequency, which angered the central head. It ducked and crushed the orca with its paw, silencing the sound. Madison stood up and looked at Descadora, who began charging its attack. The left head roared at her as if trying to tell her something. Madison was already accepting her fate. But Escadora was pushed by that attack about 400 meters, destroying everything in his path and falling on his back. Madison, who saw this, was somewhat shocked until the ground rumbled again and again until she heard a roar that she knew perfectly well. He turned around only to find -1 coming along, making his dorsal plates glow and bringing with him his own storm with strong blue lightning. Madison smiled with joy when she saw him because she knew he could stop this threat. Issei roared, and behind him came several fighters, along with several ships and helicopters, but above all, angels, demons, and Valkyries to help in this battle. In the Argo, everyone could be seen watching walk towards Descadora. Sam, well, we've got the location of the last Orca Pim, we'll open fire to keep Descadora distracted while you do your thing. Jackson received. Soldier Mr. Serizawa, you already have the target in your sights. Serizawa Fuego. And so both the Argo and the Chronos opened fire, and Madison saw dozens of missiles strike Descadora, who tried to take cover, but it was useless. Each fighter opened fire all over Descadora's body, and Madison, hearing -S roar, decided to leave, as a battle was about to begin. Descadora got back to his feet and saw his rival in front of him. Started running, roaring at Descadora, who began to do the same, and so. The two titans collided, causing a shockwave that everyone present felt, and they would witness a battle that would decide the fate of the other titans and the entire world. On the Argo. Sam, is it just me, or did this friend exercise a lot? Serafal seems to have more energy to fight. Michael, I feel a lot of energy in him. Rick, seriously? It looks like Itsuki gave the lizard a lot of steroids. Diane and many others. Suddenly an alarm sounded, and Rick went to check what it was and was very alarmed by what it was. Rick, it can't be, the radiation levels on Minus are rising very fast, and we only have about 11 minutes left before it becomes thermonuclear. Diane, what are you talking about? A jolt startled everyone, and some fell. Rick, I say that in 11 minutes it will be a bad day to watch the Red Sox. Then there was another jolt, somewhat stronger than the previous one. Sam, okay, you have to find the Orca, Madison, and run like gazelles from there. Whatever they did with Minus, if it worked, it's about to explode like an atomic bomb. Jackson understood. Prepare to land. Mark was scared, as was the little nun girl from Asia, who decided to go in case anyone got hurt or something, she could heal them quickly. The helicopter began to descend, but a lightning bolt struck it, causing it to lurch violently. The doors opened, and just as two soldiers stepped inside, lightning struck them, turning them to ash and leaving nothing behind, not even their clothes or weapons. Jackson, shit. Shit. They all started running out at full speed, and Mark looked up and saw both giants fighting. Descadora tried to bite Minus, but Minus used his hands to evade them until he started to spin and gave Descadora a tremendous tail whip, which caused him to be pushed away. Mark Madison. The left head falls to the ground with a claw of Minus, who was holding it and doing his best not to let it get up, but the right head bit him on the neck and he, without further ado, let go only to open the jaw of that head and tear out its tongue with a bite. Soldier, this way, come and see quickly. Mark started running towards the soldier to see what he found when a lightning bolt struck a few meters away from where he was, but luckily he was saved. Soldier, are you alright? I found the Orca, sir, but it's badly injured. There's no trace of your daughter here. Minus hit both heads, the central and the right one, but the left one bit him under the jaw, and Minus tried to remove it, but the central one bit his neck and the right one on his right arm. Soldier, he's not here anymore, we must leave. Soldier, quickly, you must get up here before. But they didn't realize that Descadora, having already immobilized Minus, began to drag him, and his footsteps sent debris flying. But he crashed into the helicopter, ending the lives of everyone except the girl who managed to jump before being crushed by Descadora. Still holding Minus in his jaws, he rose a few meters with his wings and then fell to the ground, dragging Minus on his back, destroying several buildings in his path and causing him harm. Fed up, he grabs the central head from behind and tears off a horn, then fires his spiral atomic breath at its chest, who was pushed several meters but began to stop using his wings. Mark and the other survivors were almost crushed by Descadora's tail, but something in the sky caught their attention, two flashes that illuminated the entire dark sky. In the Argo, Dr. Cheng sensed the presence of someone who was not the one she knew, but another. From the sky, right where Descadora was still receiving the attack of Minus, two titans emerged. Bullied. And the evolved male mutant. Atra shoots a very sticky web from his mouth at Descadora, making it impossible to escape. Descadora is trapped in a building, but his left head isn't as badly affected by the web, allowing him to break free. However, he is hit by a sonic attack from the male mutant, which disorients him slightly. Looking at the reflection of the building as he recovers and tries to free his siblings, he sees Minus approaching. He tries to stop him, but it's useless, and Minus lunges at Descadora, causing the building to collapse on top of them and making Descadora fall, somewhat in pain. Minus only growls at him with hatred, but Descadora hears the sound of Batra as well as the male Hyoudou, so he roars to the sky. Batra, Momo and the Hyoudou were ready to attack, but received two unwanted guests who will prevent them from helping their king. And those were Rodin and Kamazit who charged at both of them, causing them to crash into some buildings and rise into the sky. Now seeing their opponents, and with no other option, they launched themselves into a fight against the two of them. Batra begins to attack him with whatever he has, using his sharp legs or shooting a purple beam from his eyes, but they roll away because he is very resistant and has the durability of rock itself. He withstood the attack, but it did damage him a little. The male made cuts or scratches on Kamazit all over his body, but he was not spared from being bitten or scratched by him, in addition to having to endure his sonic roar, but he did not hold back either and attacked him with his sonic scream, but even louder. Mark and the others were watching the fight, but something behind them made everyone look and see that it was none other than Emma, who was in an armored car. "Emma, come in." "Mark who?" They hear a sound behind them and see the male's wing accidentally hit a fighter jet, which catches fire and begins to speed towards them. "Jackson, he's coming this way." The fighter jet crashes to the ground about 30 meters from its position, but even so, one is sent flying by the shockwave, and Asia goes to help him. "Emma, come in." "Jackson, it can't be Griffin." "Martinez, help me lift it." Griffin had a fragment of the fighter jet stuck in his leg, so they both grabbed him by the feet and shoulders and got into the car, along with the one who had been blown up. Once inside, Emma starts the car and they leave, but they had to dodge all the fragments or fighter jets that were being sent to crash into buildings. On the street, right between the buildings, a fighter jet explodes after losing control and crashing into a building, causing it to burst into flames. Emma and the others are almost hit by it, but luckily they manage to escape unharmed. "Mark, where's Madison?" "Emma, I don't know, I thought she was at the stadium." "Mark, well, it's not there anymore." "Jackson, help me remove the fragment, Asia will heal her as soon as we remove this thing." "Asia, hi." In the sky they roll and Batra, who are still fighting, hit a helicopter which catches fire and crashes to the ground, but in the vehicle falls a soldier still alive but with fire on his shoulder, and luckily he puts it out, but he holds on very tightly to the car so as not to fall. "Mark, I hope you find her just as easily as you lost her, Emma." "Emma, I didn't lose her, she left." "Mark, why do you think she left?" "Jackson, I don't blame that girl, because if they were my parents I would run away from home too." Em stepped on the brakes, and Mark understood what he said, but he wanted to hear it again. "Emma, what did you say?" "Jackson, if you two were my parents, I'd run away from home too." They both look at each other and understand what he said. "Emma, Mark from home." Madison ran and ran, but behind her Descendant could be seen rising up and falling on top of Minus, who received him by biting and scratching him. Madison stops and looks around at the burning building, and in front of her is a pile of houses. She recognizes her own, but when she looks back, she sees Batra and Rodin crash to the ground. The intense heat causes several cars and other objects to explode, but as they take flight, they create a shockwave that sends burning cars and other debris flying. Madison sees a car nearly hit her, but manages to get inside the house just in time. She enters and leans against the door, but she hears and feels the tremors and roars of all the titans fighting each other. She covers her ears and screams in frustration, but she was in the middle of a large-scale war. All the photos fell to the ground due to the countless tremors that were occurring everywhere. Minus held Descendant's right head in his hands and smashed it against a building, forcing it inside by inflicting damage with the rods and other objects inside. The central head roared with hatred, but he noticed the left one biting into what appeared to be a power plant as it was emitting lightning. The left head was biting hard into some equipment, and Minus noticed this and felt a bad feeling. In the air, supernatural beings, humans, and others who were watching on televisions or phones saw the entire city's energy being consumed. The lights went out until everything was plunged into darkness. Descendant fires a huge amount of black rays from its entire body, wings, tails, mouth and more into the sky, and fires its rays at Descendant. Thousands of lightning bolts destroyed all the planes, helicopters, and soldiers who were helping Minus. They were turned to ashes by this great dragon. The Argo and the Chronos were struck by lightning, but the Minus, who received a large part of the attack, retreated and stopped using the buildings, but suffered severe burns and skin loss from Descendant. Rick Minus's radiation is reaching critical mass 3 minutes until it explodes. Diane let our remaining ships withdraw. The Chronos turned around, as did its ships, which activated a shield, but it was destroyed by the beams, leaving them vulnerable if they received another devastating attack. Several fragments plummeted down all over the city. Minus, who was trying to fight again, could N', his regeneration was slow. Descendant, who had launched that devastating attack, was also damaged, but that damage was healed immediately. He looked at Minus with a smile, sensing that he was about to explode. Further on, the male Hyoudou launches a sonic attack in the form of a beam at Kamazit, who falls to the ground. Once Kamazit is on the ground, he rises 800 meters and begins to plummet, but with his legs forward. Seeing this, Kamasa tries to get up, but the Hyoudou launches another attack, destroying his right wing and preventing him from escaping. All he can do is take the attack, which pierces Kamasa's chest and bites his neck, tearing off his head. This is seen by all the people and titans, who scream and roar as they see their future prime emerge victorious. As for Batra, she was thrown until she crashed into a building. She tried to get out, but Rodin arrived and raised his temperature, burning Batra's wings and causing her to writhe in pain. Rodin was about to attack her, but she acted quickly and hit him with her front legs, making him back away and extend his wings, ready to attack again, but this time with the intention to kill. Batra, somewhat injured, used her legs to try her best to climb backward onto the building she was on. Rodin returned, this time with more murderous intentions, trying to bite her, but Batra managed to evade each of his attacks until he was struck by 2 attacks. Batra stuck her stinger in his shoulder, and the male mutant, who had come to his queen's aid, drove both of his paws into Rodin's back. Rodin did nothing. He just stood there, motionless, stunned by the sudden attack. The 2 titans step aside and watch as he rolls down, falling to the ground roaring in pain. Batra was injured, and Canada stayed on the roof of the building to rest a while the others were arriving at where their house was, only to see everything destroyed, with no trace of what was once their home. Everyone set to work searching everywhere for Madison, moving rubble after rubble to find her. Mark Madison. Jackson Mahdi. Emma Madison. They continued searching everywhere, but Mark noticed something in front of him. A hand sticking out from a large piece of rubble on top of a bathtub. Mark Emma, I found her. They all went to where Mark was pulling it out, and using their strength, they all moved that large piece of rubble, only to find Madison unconscious, with some injuries. Emma cried tears of joy and sadness at the same time. Asia began to do her part to try and heal Madison, and it was working, as her wounds began to disappear little by little without a trace. Madison opened her eyes, coughing loudly, which made her parents happy, and when she saw them, she hugged them. Madison. Mom, Dad. Emma, yes, my love, yes. But they hear Minus's roar and turn around, only to see the great black hydra approaching him and taking flight, only to fall on top of him and ensnare him with its tails and hold him with its legs to prevent him from getting away. Minus did everything possible to prevent this, even digging his legs into the ground, but it was useless as Descadora began to carry him very high up. Everyone witnessed this, Minus was being strangled by Descadora's neck and, having no more strength, he surrendered. When they were close to the atmosphere of the planet Descadora, he dropped it. Minus began to fall backward and was engulfed in flames. He was beginning to move too fast in the eye of the hurricane below him. Mark and everyone else watched as Godzilla crashed into the ground, causing a huge tremor and a shockwave that brought down some of the affected buildings. Madison didn't know what to say, she was watching as her hero and savior was defeated by a titan who didn't deserve the throne. Descadora lands on the ground, causing 2 buildings to collapse, and spreads its wings to try and provoke it, but it was useless. Minus was really tired and no longer had the strength to fight, but he feels something start walking on his back, and when he looks slightly up, he realizes it was Batra, who was also injured but still standing. She stood on top of Minus and roared at Descadora while he watched as the enormous butterfly, if you could call it that, covered half of Minus's body with its wings. But Minus, seeing what she was doing, raised his claw trying to stop her, but it was useless. The male mutt saw his queen heading towards the Black Death, who, upon seeing her, began to charge her attack. Batra Momo only remembered the beautiful moments she spent with Issei and how she wished to start a family with him. Descadora fires its attack, but I am Reincarnation. Batra is pushed out prematurely, and the one who receives the attack is the male Hyoudou who began to show cracks all over his body, but he slowly approaches his king and without further ado, just smiles at him and tells him by telepathy. Hail them, my king. An explosion shook the sky, the clouds turned red and orange, the male mutant was killed, and his energy began to fall on Minus who roared in pain as one of his titans was killed by that terrible being, who only smiled and began to approach his position. Mark, we have to do it now. Emma, do what? Mark looked at Emma and then at the orca, which Emma quickly understood. Mark began removing the orca's lid to try and reactivate it and make it work to get Descadora's attention. Emma, Mark, are you sure? Mark, yes, we must give him time. We must keep Descadora away from him. The others watch as the heads of Descadora begin to wrap around Minus, and each of its heads bites Minus, absorbing his radiation, making our protagonist roar in pain. Emma, Mark, have you seen that thing? Mark, yes, it's very dangerous, but it's the best we have. When they had it almost ready, all that was left was to turn it on, and when Madison snapped her fingers, they pressed a button and the orca started working again, and at that moment a helicopter arrived that had come for them. Dr. Cheng, quick, come in. Emma, you all go, I'll activate the frequency. The others obey and go to the helicopter, while Emma begins searching for Alpha's frequency to attract Descador's attention and lure him away from Minus. When she finds it, she activates it, and Descador, upon hearing that frequency, becomes so annoyed that he releases Minus and begins searching for that Alpha until he sees Emma in the distance, so he heads towards her to finish off the one who was calling him. Mark. Emma, let's hurry. Madison. Mom. But Emma stopped and saw Descador approaching and thought that since Descador was following the frequency, he would surely go after them and kill them all. She had made mistakes and didn't want to make them again. She looked at Madison and gave her a smile that she would never forget in her entire life. Emma turned around and started running towards the vehicle. Madison. Mom, no. Mom. Emma got in and started the car and floored the accelerator. When Descador was close, he saw Emma leaving and the sound fading away, so he started to follow her. The helicopter was already in the air and many people saw Descador chasing Emma in order to kill her. Emma moved very quickly, entering the city streets, right between the buildings to block Descador's path, but he was going at full speed and with just a push he knocked them down with his weight. Madison and the others watched in disbelief as Descador followed Emma. Madison screamed and cried for her mother. Descador took flight, firing gravitational rays at Emma, but she barely evaded them. However, she sensed that the next attack would be stronger and more devastating than the others, and she was right. Descador fired her rays simultaneously, hitting Emma and sending her car flying into the surrounding buildings. Mother. They watched as Descador used his wings to destroy some buildings in his path. The angels and others watched everything that was happening from afar. Mark watched in disbelief everything that was happening and could do nothing but watch. Emma was on the ground, the destroyed orca beside her, she could N''T move, her bones were broken, and if she got up, she would only be disintegrated by Descador, who landed several meters away from where she was, and he just looked at Emma with hatred, each head growling and making sounds as a sign of being angry, and the left one also let out saliva as a sign that he wanted to eat her. Emma, long live the king. Emma smiles and a particular sound catches Descador's attention as she begins to sniff at something that is burning. Further on, about 400 meters from where the buildings and cars were, everything began to melt like butter. A heat exceeding 4,000 degrees began to be felt hundreds of meters away. The footsteps of a certain titan caused everything to melt or turn to ash. The sound of something recharging began to be heard, and from there came -1. Giving a roar to Descador, but now it was very different as -1 now shone orange, giving off its radiation now converted into heat. Descador turned around and, not caring whether he had changed or not, was ready to fight. Upon seeing him, Minus simply closed his eyes and his entire body began to emit blue rays, his dorsal plates rising and glowing intensely until a shockwave with the image of the male Hyoudou reached Descador, who covered himself with his wings, but it was useless as they were turned to dust without leaving a trace. Descador unleashed its beams in an act of desperation, but the attacks had no effect on Minus. So Descador roared into the sky and a great whirlwind began to form. Before Minus could launch another attack, it struck him with its tails, giving Descador time to rise and move away slightly, regenerating its wings. It then took flight, reaching the clouds and gathering all the energy it could to defeat our protagonist, who watched, awaiting Descador's attack. On televisions all over the world, people were watching what was happening. Millions of people hoped Minus would win this battle, but they were nervous seeing what Descador was about to do. Dr. Serizawa and director Kitsuki watched attentively what Descador was doing. Descador was enveloped by his black rays and, being sufficiently recharged, he unleashed a powerful roar across the world, drawing the attention of all the titans heading towards his position and accelerating their pace. The clouds in the sky dispersed, revealing Descador shining bright red, its eyes glowing blood red, its wings larger, its horns different and resembling branches. Descador's body grew larger but not its necks, its tails grew longer and its spines too. Descador roared so loudly at Minus, who was watching intently, that its roar sent a shockwave through the air, sweeping away cars and other objects, even toppling buildings that were about to collapse. Descador launched an attack, this time going all out. It fired its beam at Minus, and this time it did some damage, but Minus withstood the next attack. Descador lashed out at Minus's face with its tail, and then landed on top of him with its paws. Minus got up, and when he saw Descador's tail coming towards him, he didn't flinch. He just waited, and when it hit his body, he grabbed it. When Descador saw this, it was alarmed, but it was too late. Minus, using his strength in that state, yanked it and ripped off its tail instantly. Descador was heading towards him, and before it could attack, it received a punch from Minus to its head. The right head was about to bite him, but Minus grabbed it by the jaws and, using his strength, ripped off its lower jaw and then bit it so hard that he tore off its head and threw it several kilometers away. The right head fired its attack, but it simply blocked with its hand and crushed its head with its foot. The central head then used the same tactic as Minus, but this time it was different. It kicked it with its legs and then created a spike-shaped bone on its wings, embedding it in the shoulder. The other head did nothing, and when it pulled out, it saw that the bone had melted. So it rose into the sky and roared, now with even greater force, and hundreds of thousands of powerful lightning bolts gathered within its body. The accumulated energy regenerated Descadora's heads and tails. He looked at Minus with pure hatred, and then the unthinkable happened. The three heads and his chest began to gather a huge amount of energy in the form of spheres, and when the three heads and the chest had enough energy, they fired it at the same time. The lightning bolt was so powerful that it increased in size the lower it descended, and Minus, seeing this, simply closed his eyes and awaited the attack until. Boom. The explosion was so devastating that its shockwave reached more than 15 kilometers around, like a nuclear bomb. Leaving a crater 300 meters in diameter, Descadora watched intently the cloud of smoke that formed from the explosion, looking down from the sky somewhat tired after using such an attack to finish off his enemy. But I don't expect a large orange beam with blue details to hit him in the chest and… There was another explosion, this time in the sky, and everyone saw Descadora plummet down, badly wounded. A gaping hole was in its chest, and its wings were burned and wouldn't regenerate. As the dragon fell and rose, it beheld a great terror, -1, who was unharmed, but his gaze was filled with hatred. Minus saw Descadora's wings seem to regenerate, so without hesitation, he began to run towards it and leaped using its tails, landing on top of it. Using his claws, he grabbed what remained of the dragoness wings and, unfazed by any bites, exerted force and with a powerful pull, ripped Descadora's wings off. Descadora roared and, using their heads together, struck Minus's chest, delivering a tail whip. Then they tried to use the spikes on their tails to pierce its body and finally finish it off once and for all. Descadora's tails concentrated all the spikes onto the largest one, creating a very long and sharp point that immediately went towards Minus, who watched this and did nothing but wait. And so it was, and when Descadora seemed to be enjoying its victory, it saw the two spikes that were about to pierce its chest melt as if it were ice. And they could do nothing when Minus reached them and trapped them in a bite to the chest, absorbing their remaining power, so that Descadora could not make another attack like the one he had just suffered, and with the energy he obtained, he created another pulse. Descadora's tails and a large part of its body disappeared. It fell about 70 meters from where it was and fired its beams, but they were weak, barely tickling Minus, who smiled at seeing him try everything. He created another pulse and this time destroyed Descadora's two heads, leaving only the central one. Before it could do anything, it was hit by an atomic beam that pierced its stomach. It fell backward in great pain, and Minus took advantage of this to gather more energy, this time in his paw, and placed it on Descadora's chest. Descadora didn't understand what he was doing, but when Minus exerted more force on his paw, it penetrated Descadora's chest and… a huge dome of heat and explosion illuminated the entire sky, clearing everything. When the dome disappeared, everyone saw how the city was reduced to nothing but rubble with a huge crater 700 meters in diameter and 20 meters deep. Mark and Madison looked around the city, or what was left of it, searching for Minus, who was nowhere to be seen. In the city's ruins, mountains of rubble were scattered everywhere, but one mountain stood out, and from it emerged Descadora's central head, completely burned. It looked around, searching for Minus, but it was lifted up, and the one responsible was Minus, who had Descadora's neck in his jaws, trying to devour it. Descadora roared and roared for help, but there was no one in sight. Madison watched Descadora intently, but even more so -1, as if to say, finish him. Minus began preparing his atomic ray, and as he did so, Descadora's neck, mouth, and eyes began to glow blue. When Minus's plates were raised, they fell with force, and he fired his spiral atomic ray, disintegrating and ending Descadora's life once and for all. Minus shook himself and small red rays came out of his mouth, and he looked at those who were walking away. Rick, how awful, but what a relief that he's on our side. Dr. Cheng for now. Madison there. Footsteps caught the attention of Minus, who turned around and saw that it was the Titan Behemoth. Then he looked to the side and saw the Titan Scylla. Then came the female Hyoudou Queen, Tiamat, Zilla, Titanus Ramarak, an 80-meter-tall skullcrawler. Then Rodin and another relative of Kamazit's landed, but this one was a little small, yet still dangerous. The two roared at Minus, but he only growled in annoyance, and without further ado, the two bowed before their new alpha. Minus turned his head and mutated. Ramarak, Tiamat, Zilla, Scylla, and Behemoth bowed in respect, for now he was the new king of the monsters. Madison looked at Minus with a happy smile, as they walked away under the watchful eyes of everyone, and Minus roared to the sky so loudly that it was heard by the whole world, who shouted with joy and victory. Everyone was shouting with joy, even hugging their children, parents, and siblings for having won this battle. But a certain titan watched Minus from afar and the titans who bowed before him. Soon we will meet -1, and when that happens, we will prove which of us deserves to be the ultimate Fa of all the titans. Minus stopped roaring and just stared at the sea, how it shook for some reason, and it wasn't the titans, but something else. He relaxed as he felt his queen settle on his shoulder, her face pressed against his cheek. Minus grunted happily, and seeing the titans, he roared at them again, giving them an order. Go back to his kingdom. Post credits. San Francisco. In the ruins of San Francisco, a couple walked around, carrying a bouquet of white flowers to leave on one of the graves of the thousands of people who lost their lives in that city. The couple left the bouquets of flowers at a child's grave and then left, but they didn't notice something. In a small mound of rubble, something shone with a faint sky blue hue. Inside was a small hand with black scales, but it was a human hand. Inside, there was nothing because of the shield, but on the back of what appeared to be a 7-year-old child, something was growing stronger, and the child opened his eyes, which were black with reptilian bluer eyes. Mom, Dad. Madi. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.